On a stormy night, Hillya Delphines enters a dangerous place to meet Gerald, the notorious Mercenary King. He immediately calls her out, finding it absurd that a noble lady would seek him out. He warns her that this is no place for someone of her stature. Unintimidated, Hillya confirms she knows exactly where she is and who he is. She has heard any request can be granted here for the right price. Then, she makes her shocking proposal. She wants to hire him for a marriage. Gerald is left utterly speechless. Hillya calmly continues her proposal. On her upcoming wedding day, she wants Gerald to kidnap her and then marry her. Gerald finds this completely ridiculous, telling her this is a mercenary guild and she should look for a husband elsewhere. Unfazed, Hillya confirms she is exactly where she needs to be, stating he is the man she intends to marry. She knows his true identity, not just the Mercenary King, but Crown Prince Arpt, the heir cursed with dragon's blood and destined to become a ruthless killer. Gerald found her proposal completely unbelievable. He asked her to confirm that, knowing full well who he was, she wanted him to abduct and marry her. Hillya cheerfully agreed, saying he understood perfectly. Her plan was simple. He would kidnap her and they would immediately sign a marriage contract to make it official. Losing his patience, Gerald grabbed her shoulder. He warned that if she kept spouting such nonsense, he would end her right there. But Hillya was utterly unfazed. She told him this was no joke, and he had no choice but to listen, because if he refused her offer, he would die. Hillya's story started long before she met the Mercenary King. In her first life, she was a regular woman from South Korea. After her death, she was reborn as Hillya Delphine into a prestigious and wealthy ducal family. She thought she had it all, especially after marrying a man she believed loved her, Grand Duke Ludwig. But this perfect existence was a facade. She soon discovered his infidelity. Before she could even process the heartbreak, she was framed for treason by her own husband, bringing her once happy existence to a swift and tragic end. But this wasn't her first second chance. At the moment of her execution, she had regressed to the time before her marriage. Hillya knew she couldn't waste the opportunity, but this regression was pure chaos. Lost and paralyzed by indecision, she didn't know who framed her or how to fight back. Her weakness allowed Ludwig to manipulate her again. She dismissed rumors of his affair, wanting proof before acting. That hesitation was a fatal mistake. History repeated itself. She lost him to the same woman, and her efforts to struggle were too late. In her third life, Hillya refused to be a passive victim. She resolved to escape her tragic fate, but every plan she made mysteriously failed, and she was always recaptured. Her attempts brought disaster upon those who helped her, with one loyal aide being struck down while begging her to flee. This time, her end was even more grim, a public execution. As the blade fell, she had a chilling realization. It wasn't just bad luck. Someone knew her every move and was deliberately sabotaging her from the shadows. At her public execution, Hillya despaired, wondering how she could escape this hell. She spotted a sickeningly familiar face in the crowd. Evangeline, the woman who had stolen her husband in every lifetime. As if ruining her life wasn't enough, Evangeline stood there with a smug grin. Hillya watched in horror as her rival mouthed a chilling message, calling her the original female lead and claiming everything now belonged to her. In her final moments, Hillya realized the words were from another world, just as her enemy wished her to die in peace. As her consciousness faded, Hillya finally connected the dots. Evangeline's strange words about an original female lead meant she was a possessor, someone who knew this world was a story. Suddenly, Hillya jolted awake in her bed, gasping for air. She was back again. The disbelief quickly turned to cold fury as she remembered the constant betrayal. It all made perfect sense now. Evangeline wasn't just lucky. She knew the entire future because she had read it all in a novel, while Hillya had been living it completely blind. Hillya finally understood the chilling truth. Evangeline targeted her because she was the original female lead of this world. Looking back, it all made sense. Evangeline's smug confidence, her unnatural ability to charm everyone. She had effortlessly stolen not just Hillya's fiancé, but every influential man, even claiming the crown princess title for herself. Every betrayal and tragic end wasn't a coincidence. It was a calculated part of Evangeline's plan. This time, however, Hillya was done being a victim and refused to let it happen again. Hillya realizes her biggest mistake. She always chose the path that wouldn't hurt anyone, but that kindness was a fatal flaw that got her loved ones destroyed. Now that she knows her life was just a twisted scenario, she refuses to sit still. She might not have read the original story like Evangeline, but she has something way better. All the intel from her past lives. Knowing Ludwig has already fallen for the enemy, Hillya forms a new plan. A cunning smile lights up her face as she decides on her first move. She's going to get a new husband. Hylya's focus shifted to another key figure in her suffering, Grand Duke Ludwig Kielm. He was her fiancé and husband for 3 lifetimes, the emperor's favorite nephew, and her sworn enemy. The man was ruthlessly ambitious, entering a loveless marriage simply to secure her family's wealth. He was also deeply obsessive, committing horrible acts to keep her by his side before ultimately casting her away. She realized Evangeline wasn't her only target for revenge. With a new plan forming, Hillya strode forward and threw open the doors, ready to act. Filled with the rage from 3 lifetimes of suffering, Hillya unleashes a furious scream from her balcony. She makes a solemn promise. Ludwig will regret everything. The commotion brings her fiancé running, completely stunned by her sudden change in behavior. Later, her rebellion takes a more direct form. When presented with her wedding dress, Hillya flatly refuses to wear it. An enraged Ludwig reminds her the wedding is tomorrow, but she coldly dismisses his words as nonsense. The first shot in her war for freedom has been fired. Evangeline steps in, playing the peacemaker. She tells Ludwig to be more supportive, noting it's normal for a bride to feel anxious before her big day. But the sight of the 2 schemers together only disgusts Hillya. The moment triggers a horrible memory from her first life. She recalls Evangeline's cruel words after the wedding ceremony. With a smug look, Evangeline revealed that her and Ludwig's initials were secretly engraved on the very dress Hillya wore. Hillya realizes she had been a walking tribute to their affair. The memory of her first wedding night crashes down on Hillya. She recalls Evangeline's smug expression, mocking her for ever thinking she was the star of the show. In that life, Evangeline admitted Hillya was just a prop to make her secret affair with Ludwig more thrilling. Hillya understood her rival's ambition, to use Ludwig to bring the world to her knees. Snapping back to the present, she turns to Ludwig with a pained look. She asks him a single, devastating question. Did he know someone engraved initials on her wedding dress? In that painful memory, Ludwig feigned ignorance, asking if it wasn't common to engrave a couple's initials on a dress. Hillya knew better, though, shouting that they weren't hers. Evangeline jumped in, suggesting a simple mix-up, but Hillya cornered her. She reminded everyone that Evangeline herself had supervised the fittings. Playing the part of a naive victim, Hillya pointed to the L&E embroidery. She tearfully suggested a jealous woman nearby was trying to sabotage her wedding, looking straight at her 2 betrayers. Ludwig's smile is cold. He reminds Hillya their marriage is an imperial decree she cannot defy. With the wedding just a day away, he condescendingly tells her to be a good girl and simply accept her fate. But Hillya has had enough. In a shocking move, she climbs onto the balcony railing. She shouts that she will not wear a dress with another woman's initials and would rather face a grim end than let them ruin her honor. Ludwig panics, ordering her to get down, but her resolve is firm. Hillya stands perilously on the balcony railing, shouting that she would rather face a grim end than be dishonored. She knows Ludwig is cornered. This marriage is essential for his political ambitions, and he cannot afford the scandal of her demise. Internally, she challenges him, confident that he has no choice but to yield. Ludwig clenches his fists, speechless with fury. A dangerous red energy flares around him as his fury boils over, but Hillya stands her ground, resolute and unafraid. With his fury reaching its peak, Ludwig unleashes his power, not on Hillya, but on the wedding dress itself, incinerating it in a blast of red energy. Evangeline and the maids cry out in shock. He calmly tells Hillya the problem is now solved, extending his hand and promising their wedding won't be ruined. Hillya steps down, taking his hand, but asks what she'll wear tomorrow. In a stunning power move, Ludwig turns to a horrified Evangeline, coolly stating that she has a dress Hillya can use instead. With the situation under control, Ludwig turns his cold gaze to a stunned Evangeline. He notes that her new dress, a lavish birthday gift from the Empress, is more than grand enough to serve as a wedding gown. Evangeline's face twists in silent fury as he commands her to hand the dress over to her sister-in-law. Later, as Hillya examines the exquisite gown, she reflects that she only wanted to push back against Evangeline. But seeing the scandalous initials embroidered onto the fabric, she realizes she should have done this sooner. The gossip suggests everyone already knew. Hillya realizes the maids were clearly bribed to ignore the problems with her wedding preparations. She resolves to stay strong, reminding herself that her revenge is just getting started. She thinks of the ring the Emperor gave Ludwig, which once had 3 glowing diamonds. With each of her past lives, 1 diamond faded. Now that all the lights have vanished, she knows this is her final opportunity. Clenching her fist with grim determination, Hillya vows that she will not fail this time. Later, a knock comes from Hillya's door. Her loyal maid, Annie, enters to check on her, her expression full of concern for Hillya's swollen eyes. As Hillya offers a weak smile, she silently reflects on her past lives. Annie, the daughter of her wet nurse, had perished multiple times just trying to save her. Hillya grips the maid's hand, making a firm promise to protect her this time. Leaning close, Annie whispers that the scandalous initials on the dress indeed belong to Evangeline, expressing her relief that Hillya finally sees the truth. Hillya thanks Annie and arranges a secret meeting with Sir Betlane for that evening. She reflects on his past loyalty. In a previous life, he was the only knight who never betrayed her, sacrificing himself to help her escape. Now, as he stands before her, Betlane gets straight to the point. He bluntly states that Grand Duke Ludwig is not marrying her out of love. He warns that Ludwig only wants the power and legitimacy of her family name and confirms that his relationship with Evangeline is far from ordinary. Sir Betlane begs Hillya to reconsider the wedding for her own sake. Hillya reflects on her past life, remembering how she ignored his unwavering loyalty and blunt honesty, which led to her ruin. She tells him it's too late now. The wedding is tomorrow, and Ludwig would never agree to cancel. But as the loyal knight watches with concern, Hillya's demeanor shifts. Realizing he always had her best interests at heart, she invokes her authority as the heir of House Delphine. With newfound resolve, she gives him a single command: protect her tonight. An hour later, Hillya moves through the estate grounds, protected by Sir Betlane. She feels secure, trusting that the strongest Delphine knight can help her slip away undetected. Her plan is suddenly interrupted by a familiar, angry voice. Hiding in the shadows, Hillya sees Evangeline confronting Ludwig on a balcony. Evangeline furiously accuses him of altering her dress. Ludwig tries to silence her, revealing his true motives in the process. He bluntly states he needs the power of Hillya's family to stand against the crown prince, exposing the true reason for their wedding. From the shadows, Hillya watched the confrontation unfold. Ludwig callously grabbed Evangeline's wrist, dismissing her anger over a dress. He coldly admitted he only endured her because he needed House Delphine's power. In a flash of fury, Evangeline slapped him. Hillya was stunned. Ludwig's demeanor turned icy. He pushed Evangeline away, ordering her not to touch him. He then commanded her to return to the palace and stay away from the wedding. As he departed, he left her with a final, chilling warning not to interfere again. From her hiding spot, Hillya watched Ludwig depart and found the situation almost comical. The two who were once madly inseparable were already showing cracks in their alliance. She remembered how her own life had been thrown away for their trivial dramas. Clenching her fist, she swore it wouldn't happen again. A moment later, Sir Betlane gently took her hand, noticing she was trembling. He pulled her into a protective embrace, apologizing for being forward, but explaining he was worried. Touched by his kindness, Hillya's resolve hardened. For people like him, she vowed to survive. Hillya's resolve hardened. She refused to lose everything again by foolishly avoiding reality. This was her final chance, a gamble with her very life on the line. Her new strategy was simple but audacious. She would make Crown Prince Arpad her ally. Armed with knowledge from her past lives, she would help him and earn his trust. See, the imperial bloodline carried a dangerous secret: the dragon's madness. The stronger the dragon blood, the more severe the condition. And since Arpad's was the most potent, his madness was a ticking time bomb. Hillya recalled the grim future she knew awaited the crown prince. Consumed by the dragon's madness, Arpad was deemed untrustworthy by his own father. The emperor, in his paranoia, intended to name Ludwig as the heir instead. To counter this, Arpad hid his identity, operating as the mercenary King Gerald and building his strength in the city's underbelly. But in every past life, this strategy failed. He was always discovered and eliminated by the emperor. This time, Hillya vowed to stop it because only she knew how to save him from his fate. With a confident smirk, Hillya reveals she knows everything, including his fatal dragon's madness. She makes a bold offer. If the mercenary king helps her, she will cure Crown Prince Arpad and ensure he takes the throne. The prince scoffs, trying to deny he's the same person, but Hillya calmly confirms how dangerous it would be if his secret got out. He's left speechless. Just as she thinks her plan is working, his entire demeanor shifts. In a flash, he grabs her, his eyes glowing intensely as he demands an explanation. With a blade pressed against her skin, Arpad snarled that he hated people trying to control him. He called her arrogant for thinking she could make him emperor and warned that she had crossed a very dangerous line. Hillya's initial shock turned to cold resolve. Realizing she would die at her enemy's hands anyway if this failed, she refused to back down. Instead of flinching, Hillya pushed forward against it, daring him to go through with it. She coolly stated that in the end, he would be the one to regret it. With the blade still pressed to her skin, Hillya's resolve didn't break. She calmly informed the mercenary king that he would be the one to regret this confrontation, not her. Her sheer audacity took Arpad by surprise. He let out a disbelieving laugh, remarking that he never knew the lady of House Delphines was insane. Still, intrigued by her confidence, he called her brave. Gripping her arm, he demanded an answer. How did she plan on stopping the so-called madman from losing his mind? With a smirk, Hillya grabs Arpid's arm, asking if he seriously expected her to reveal her secrets for free. She correctly assumes that if she told him everything, he'd have no more use for her. Arpid's eyes narrow as he threatens to simply take her and force the information out. But Hillya came prepared for this. She coolly informs him that if she fails to return home safely, damaging secrets about him will be leaked to his political enemies. She's made it clear that getting rid of her would be his own downfall. Arpid calls her a strange woman, pointing out that an ordinary person could never find such dangerous information. He asks why he should trust her when her proposal is so risky. Realizing words aren't enough, Hillya decides to offer a down payment to earn his trust. Though suspicious, Arpid releases her, telling her to prove her worth. She then places a small, glowing object in his palm. Stunned by the powerful relic, he stares at it intensely and commands her to open it for him right away. Arpid holds the pouch, warning Hillya that if this is a trick, he will make sure it's her last. Unfazed, she reveals its contents, a brilliant, glowing jewel. She calmly identifies it as the Tears of Agrippina, one of the 5 legendary blessed jewels he's been desperately searching for. Hillya adds that if he accepts her deal, she will tell him how to get the rest. Though he admits the item is rare, Arpid coldly asks if she truly believes one jewel is enough to sway a crown prince. Hillya calmly corrected the prince. She explained this wasn't just a jewel, but one of the 5 blessed gems he desperately sought. However, she then revealed a crucial catch he didn't know. None of the relics, including the one in his hand, could actually cure his madness. Looking him dead in the eye, Hillya declared that she alone was the true cure for his condition. This was the final straw. Enraged, Arpid instantly slammed her back, pressing a blade firmly to her throat. His patience had officially run out. Arpid dismisses the jewel as an irritating down payment. He tightens his grip, pressing the blade against Hillya's neck until a small mark appears. Despite the threat, she is completely unfazed. Hillya calmly repeats her promise. She will cure his madness and make sure he becomes emperor. Arpid demands a real plan, warning her that she won't leave alive if it's a political trap. She coolly tells the Mercenary King that he will find out all the details only after he accepts her offer, stating she's already paid her part. With a blade still pressed to her throat, Hillya calmly states that the choice is his. Gerald scoffs, accusing her of blackmailing him with his secret identity, but she just cheerfully calls it part of the contract. After a tense moment, he calls her request the most ridiculous he's ever heard, but finally caves. He accepts her insane proposal, but warns her to keep her promise. Later, under an ominous crimson moon, 2 servants worry that their master might be returning, even though he's supposed to be away on business. The servants froze as heavy footsteps echoed through the hall. It was Arpid, his presence immediately filling the room with a chilling energy. Stunned by his early return, one of the maids stammered, asking how he was back so soon. Arpid coldly questioned her surprise, reminding her that he was simply returning to his own home. With a threatening glint in his red eyes, he then asked if they were perhaps afraid he'd lose control and harm them. The terrified staff could only watch in silence as their unpredictable prince walked past. Under the crimson moon, Arpid reflects on his most guarded secret, the hereditary madness he suppresses in the catacombs, a fact he thought no one knew. He's stunned that this woman somehow knows about his double life as both crown prince and mercenary king. Hillya then makes a bold declaration. She can cure his condition. To prove her claim, she presents a small item and asks a goddess for a sign. In response, a brilliant magical light erupts from her hand, leaving Arpid to face this undeniable proof. Hillya makes an unbreakable vow, swearing she can quell his madness and offering her own wrist as proof if she lies. Arpid is stunned by her claim. He doesn't know her identity or the source of her information, but as he reflects under the crimson moon, one thing is certain. He can't let Ludwig have her. This wasn't a request, it was blackmail. A slow smirk spreads across his face. This woman had the nerve to threaten him. Then, a critical detail clicks into place. Her wedding is tomorrow. The dreaded morning of Hillya's 4th wedding finally arrives. She's immediately confronted by a furious Ludwig, who demands to know how much trouble she caused him. He berates her for being weak-willed and questions how she could possibly fulfill her duties as a Grand Duchess. He then notices a fresh cut on her neck, demanding an explanation. But instead of cowering, Hillya coolly interrupts him. She explains there was an intruder in the night, and Ludwig is stunned when she claims she woke up with a blade held to her throat. Ludwig explodes, refusing to believe her intruder story. He yells that security was airtight, callously accusing her of having a nightmare and hurting herself in a daze. But Hillya masterfully flips his logic against him. If no one could get in, she says, then the culprit must be an insider, someone trying to sabotage their wedding. She leans in, her voice dripping with insinuation, and asks where exactly he was last night. Stunned into silence, Ludwig grabs her arm, warning her to watch her words, but her accusation hangs heavily between them.
Ludwig absolutely snaps.
Screaming that Hillya shouldn't push her delusions onto him on their wedding day, he violently shoves her. Hillya crumples to the floor as he demands to know why she has to whine right up until the ceremony. But before he can continue his tirade, the doors are thrown open with a massive bang. Ludwig freezes, turning in shock to see a new arrival. Standing in the doorway, radiating pure fury, is the Emperor himself. He stares daggers at Ludwig and bellows his name, his voice echoing through the hall. Just as Ludwig tightens his grip, an enraged voice demands to know what is going on. It's the Emperor. Ludwig freezes, shocked by the sudden arrival. This was Hillya's plan all along. She knew the Emperor always paid a surprise visit on the wedding morning. She deliberately provoked Ludwig to expose his true, aggressive nature. Playing her part, Hillya collapses to the floor. A panicked Ludwig insists it's all a misunderstanding and begs her to agree. Looking up, Hillya weakly confirms his story, apologizing for the scene she expertly created. The Emperor's cold gaze lands on Hillya's bruised wrist. He expresses his deep disappointment, asking Ludwig if he's now resorting to getting physical with his own fiancée. Panicked, Ludwig denies everything, desperately trying to remind the Emperor that he was the one who pushed for this marriage. Unimpressed, the Emperor delivers a chilling warning. If Ludwig fails him one more time, he'll have no choice but to consider other alternatives. With a final dismissive word, calling him pathetic, the Emperor turns and walks away, leaving a humiliated Ludwig behind. As Hillya travels to the wedding venue, the streets are filled with cheering citizens. They congratulate her and wish her well, calling her the perfect bride. But to Hillya, their kind words feel like a terrible curse. She puts on a convincing performance, smiling and waving at the crowd, but her mind is completely focused on the plan. She knows all she has to do now is wait. Soon, Arpt will arrive at the plaza to stage her dramatic abduction, and her real life will finally begin. As Hillya waits in her carriage, she glances at the clock tower, growing anxious. Arpt should have arrived by now, but he's nowhere in sight. Doubt creeps in as she reconsiders her proposal. A strange woman had appeared, promising to cure his madness and make him emperor. She begins to panic, fearing he doubted her and abandoned the plan. Suddenly, her carriage lurches to a violent stop. The confused driver looks down as a lone figure strides through the plaza, bringing the entire wedding procession to a halt and stunning the onlookers. The lone figure is none other than the reclusive Crown Prince Arpid. Onlookers and guards stare in disbelief, murmuring his name. An official, completely bewildered, approaches him. He questions the prince's intentions, politely stating that if he wishes to congratulate the bride, he should wait until the procession reaches the temple. The crowd is just as confused, wondering why the prince would even attend as a guest, let alone stand in the middle of the plaza to block the bride's path. But Arpid doesn't move, bringing the grand wedding to a standstill. With a cold and steady voice, Crown Prince Arpid orders the wedding officials to move. He declares he has an urgent matter to confirm and warns them not to block his path. To ensure no one interferes, he commands the knights to hold their positions. The flustered official stammers they would never dare obstruct him, but cautiously asks what he needs. Arpid ignores the pleasantries and gets straight to the point, demanding to know the location of Lady Hillya Delphines. His direct question leaves the men completely stunned. The official finds the Crown Prince's intense focus on the bride suspicious. He quietly dispatches a messenger to alert Grand Duke Ludwig at the temple. But Arpid's patience has run out. In a flash of movement, one of the officials cries out, clutching a serious wound on his arm. Arpid's voice is ice as he reminds them he gave a clear warning not to move. He promises that while it was an arm this time, a neck would be next. He then calmly repeats his demand, asking where Lady Hillya is. With his patience gone, Arpid's eyes glow an intense red. In a flash of movement, an official screams, falling back while clutching a serious wound on his arm. Arpid's voice is cold as he reminds the stunned men that he warned them not to move. He promises that while it was an arm this time, a neck would be next. He then asks one final time for Lady Hillya's location. The onlookers tremble, whispering in fear and wondering if the Crown Prince's infamous madness has returned. As the crowd murmurs about the prince disrupting his own cousin's wedding, Hillya herself steps forward. The bride calmly greets Arpid, introducing herself as the daughter of Delphine. With perfect composure, she notes that whatever his reason for being here, he is making her late for the ceremony. Ignoring her polite dismissal, Arpid closes the distance between them. He firmly lifts her chin, forcing her to meet his intense gaze. In this public space, he wordlessly asserts his complete control over the situation and her. The crowd gasps in horror. Disregarding all tradition, Arpt lifts Hillya's veil, an act not even her groom was permitted before the ceremony. As whispers of the disgraceful display spread, Hillya's loyal knight, Betrayals, draws his sword and steps between them, demanding the prince halt. From his seat, a furious Ludwig declares this an unforgivable insult to the House of Delphine. He questions how the crown prince could subject a noble lady to such a public humiliation, recognizing it as a direct challenge to his authority. The crowd watches in horror as Hillya's knight draws his blade on the prince, a suicidal act of loyalty. Hillya plays her part perfectly, pleading with Arpt to show mercy and let the wedding proceed. But Arpt sees right through her performance. He realizes she is masterfully setting the stage for her own kidnapping. Amused by her bold plan, he decides to play along. Drawing his own sword, Arpt fully accepts his role as the villainous groom arriving to steal the bride from the altar. Done with the theatrics, Arpt doesn't hesitate. He delivers a swift, decisive blow that sends a knight, Betrayals, crashing to the ground. Hillya's carefully crafted axe shatters instantly. She cries out Betrayals' name, her face a mask of genuine shock and fear. The knight tries to insist he's fine, but she ignores him, turning to Arpt with real panic in her eyes and begging him for mercy. Arpt stops, confused. He realizes her expression is no longer an act. Seeing her true, unfiltered worry for another man stirs a strange, sour feeling deep inside him. Just then, her fiancé Ludwig steps forward, mockingly commenting on how well her knight serves her. Hillya immediately shields Betrayals, declaring that a knight's sins fall on his master. She bravely tells Ludwig that if he wants a price for this insult, he must take it from her. In a shocking move, Ludwig reveals his hand is now gravely wounded from his own sword. He grabs Hillya, coolly stating that she just offered to pay the price for the disruption. As Hillya stares in horror at his crazy act, Betrayals can only watch helplessly. Without warning, Arpt sweeps Hillya into his arms, striding away from the altar. The crowd erupts as Hillya feigns panic, asking what he is doing. He ignores them, his mind on their contract. Arpt had made it clear he wasn't one for predatory agreements, but she now owed him a debt equal to a knight's life. Looking down at her with a confident smirk, he notes that her cooperation has confirmed everything he needed to know. His part in this grand deception was now set in stone. Carrying Hillya over his shoulder, Arpt announced to the stunned crowd that she was far too precious for a man like Ludwig. He proclaimed that he would settle the insult of lifting her veil by simply becoming the groom himself. He then sent a dismissive message to Ludwig, telling him he could just go home. Hillya played her part perfectly, crying out for her fiancé and begging the prince to release her. As her knight Betrayals yelled in protest, Arpt calmly walked away, initiating an ancient and legally recognized custom, the predatory marriage. The empire's entire history began with a myth, a dragon snatching a princess from her own wedding. In a brilliant move, Arpt just made it a reality. As the crown prince with the strongest dragon bloodline, his public abduction of Hillya was a perfect reenactment of its founding. The capital erupted into chaos as news spread. While guests reeled in shock, Ludwig was left fuming. He couldn't believe Arpt had used the ancient and almost forgotten custom of a predatory marriage to so utterly humiliate him. As the chaos unfolded, Evangeline was in disbelief. With the emperor himself acting as matchmaker, who would dare interfere? Ludwig, however, completely lost his composure. Evangeline grabbed him, telling her brother to get a grip. He furiously demanded how he could be calm when his knights did nothing while his bride was stolen. Kneeling before him, the knights explained their helplessness. The man who took Lady Delphine was His Highness, the Crown Prince. The reveal left Ludwig utterly speechless, his rage replaced by pure shock. Still processing the shocking reveal, Ludwig refused to let this stand. He stormed off to confront the emperor directly, demanding an audience. At the doors, however, the royal guards stopped him cold. They informed him that His Majesty was in an urgent meeting and could not be disturbed. This was the final straw for Ludwig. He was certain the emperor was inside, plotting to use this chaos to Arpt's advantage. Overwhelmed with rage and humiliation, Ludwig grabbed a guard, screaming about the injustice before collapsing to the floor in defeat. In a quiet office, Empress Isabel cuts through the tension, asking the emperor how he plans to resolve the chaos. He admits he's still considering the situation, as both the crown prince and the missing bride have yet to appear. The empress voices her fear that Arpt's barbaric act is proof that his hereditary madness has finally consumed him. A dark memory surfaces of when a young Arpt, in his first fit of madness, left her with a permanent injury. She believes this public spectacle is his twisted reminder of that day. The emperor grips his armrest tightly, his worst fears confirmed. The crown prince has inherited his mother's madness. He coldly warns Empress Isabel not to mention the late Empress Roxelin in connection with this chaos, and she quickly apologizes. However, the Empress's fear is personal. She vividly recalls a young Arpt, lost to his first fit of madness, leaving her with a permanent injury. That terrifying memory is exactly why she cannot, and will not, ever trust the heir to the throne. 3 days after the public abduction, Hillya and Arpt finally arrive on the outskirts of the capital. As they ride, Hillya reflects on her decision. She acknowledges that a bride kidnapping is a forceful act, but it was a necessary part of her plan. Not only was it the only way to secure her alliance with the crown prince, but it also held deep symbolic power within the empire's history. The strategy was perfect for reinforcing Arpt's position. Ironically, she learned this tactic from Ludwig, who once staged a fake kidnapping to marry Evangeline. Hillya savors her victory, remembering how Ludwig once used the empire's founding myth to legitimize his claim to the throne. Now, she's flipping the script, using his exact strategy against him. She pictures his humiliated face and wishes she could see it. Turning to Arpt, she notices his grim expression. She suggests they could slow down now that they've left the capital, but he sternly refuses. He warns that pursuers might catch up at any moment. Without another word, he spurs the horse into a gallop, forcing her to yelp and cling on tightly. After the grueling 3-day ride, they finally reach an imperial villa. Hillya feels utterly exhausted and gross, immediately declaring her desperate need to wash up and find a bed. Arpt overhears her eagerness and smirks, remarking that his new bride seems a bit too proactive. Flustered, Hillya realizes he completely misinterpreted her meaning. Before she can correct him, she notices he looks perfectly pristine, while she's a mess. Too tired to even question it, she gives up, feeling drained and defeated by his teasing. At a secluded location, they meet a priest who is stunned to see the crown prince has actually arrived. Wasting no time, Arpt formally requests the priest officiate his wedding to Hillya and serve as their witness. The request makes Hillya freeze. His words are the exact same ones she used when she first proposed the plan. She recalls how angry he looked back then, making her assume he'd only half listened to the details. But his perfect recall proves he was paying very close attention from the very beginning. Hillya observes that Arpt, despite his harsh exterior, is surprisingly meticulous and has followed her plan to the letter. But the priest is deeply concerned. He tells the crown prince that while his royal status will protect him from scandal, this bride kidnapping will surely ruin Hillya's reputation. Arpt remains unfazed. He coolly explains that after 3 days, her honor is already compromised. The only way to salvage the situation is for them to marry immediately. To seal the deal, he reminds the priest of an old, unbreakable oath, leaving him no choice but to concede. With her mind made up, Hillya's resolve was absolute. She informed the priest that after 3 days of consideration, she was ready to marry the crown prince. Seeing her determination, the priest finally relented and invited them to the altar. With no guests present, Hillya and Arpt stood before him and exchanged their sacred vows. They signed the marriage certificate and received a holy blessing, officially and quietly tying their fates together. Their strategic alliance was now a legally binding union, setting their grand plan into motion. With their vows exchanged, the priest officially declares Hillya and Arpt a married couple. Hillya breathes a sigh of relief, thinking she's finally cleared the biggest hurdle. This union is recognized by the temple, an authority that not even the emperor can defy. But her relief is short-lived when the priest asks them to seal their vows with a kiss. Hillya freezes, completely caught off guard. She realizes it's a necessary step, but the thought of kissing a man she barely knows, let alone the crown prince, makes her hesitate as Arpt watches her silently. Hillya's mind raced. They had only just met, and she certainly didn't love him. The priest's request for a kiss made her freeze completely. Arpt simply watched her, giving nothing away. But Hillya knew she had to see this through. She told herself to calm down. This was just a necessary part of the ceremony to secure their alliance. Stealing her resolve, she met him as he gently lifted her chin and leaned in. The kiss sealed their vows, cementing a partnership born not of love, but of pure survival. As their lips met, Hillya's forced composure crumbled. She found herself trembling, her heart racing uncontrollably as a strange feeling washed over her. She'd performed this vow with Ludwig in past lives, but those moments were hollow and meaningless. This was completely different. The kiss deepened, and Arpt showed no sign of pulling away. Caught in his firm hold, a flustered Hillya could only wonder how long he intended for this to continue, as their simple business deal suddenly felt far more complicated. Finally breaking away, a flustered Hillya pushes against Arpt, gasping that he's gone far enough. She reminds him the priest is still right there, watching them. But Arpt's expression turns deadly serious. He stares down at her, his red eyes filled with an unnerving intensity, and demands to know just who she really is. Stunned by the sudden shift, Hillya can only ask what he means. Arpt reflects internally. After surviving countless bouts of madness, he believed he had perfect self-control. Yet this woman was making him lose his composure. Arpt reflects that the moment their lips met, he completely lost his reason. For the first time, the raging beast of his madness seemed to calm down in her presence, a sensation he never felt. He is left completely baffled, wondering who Hillya truly is. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Palace, news of the shocking abduction has reached the capital. Evangeline arrives with a sullen Ludwig, sweetly telling her mother she came because she was curious. The court buzzes with gossip about the scandal. At the palace, the Empress explains the Emperor's puzzling inaction to Evangeline. He has delayed any punishment, as neither Arpt nor Hillya can be found. A nearby noble is outraged, insisting their crime is undeniable, but the Empress sharply silences him. She fumes, realizing the Emperor is already protecting his son. While Evangeline questions why Arpt would choose Hillya, the Empress reveals her strategy. Since their pairing seems illogical to everyone, they will exploit the confusion, using rumors and public opinion to control the narrative and ruin the couple's reputation. The Empress lays out her devious strategy. She will paint the abduction as a tragic mishap caused by the Crown Prince's infamous madness. By portraying Arpt as an unstable man who could go berserk at any moment, they'll create public pressure demanding Hillya be saved and married to Ludwig. The Empress is certain that with enough outcry, even the Emperor will be forced to act. Meanwhile, far from the capital schemes, Hillya relaxes in a warm bath, feeling like she's finally coming back to life. She quietly reflects on how simple a wedding could be. Her past weddings were always grand, extravagant affairs. They were decorated with flowers and jewels, a perfect picture of a happy couple that was built on lies. Yet, Hillya feels far more comfortable with the simple ceremony she just had with Arpt. For the first time, this wedding was her own choice. A wave of pure relief washes over her. She has finally escaped Ludwig. Now, she just needs to return to the capital and handle the fallout. As she strategizes, a sudden worry interrupts her thoughts, wondering if her loyal aide, Sir Betrayals, is safe. As Hillya's momentary peace fades, her thoughts drift to her loyal aide, Sir Betrayals. He was hurt during the commotion and must believe she was truly taken against her will. A sudden, cold fear grips her. Knowing his unwavering loyalty, she realizes he might do something drastic to atone for his perceived failure. Her maid, Annie, is surely beside herself with worry too. Hillya sighs, knowing she couldn't tell them the unbelievable truth. She just hopes they can endure until she can finally explain everything. Her reflection is interrupted as a voice calls for her. As Hillya enters her new room, a line of maids bows, wishing her a pleasant evening. The sheer formality of it all feels overwhelming, as she realizes they have no idea her marriage is just a contract, a survival pact. For a moment, she's flustered but quickly brushes the feeling aside, deciding it doesn't matter what they think. Exhausted from the day's events, Hillya concludes the only thing important is a soft bed. Ignoring everything else, she walks over and immediately lies down, finally getting a moment to rest. Just as Hillya settles down, a voice calls out. She looks up to find Arpt standing in her room, his robe casually open. He remarks that his bride is quite bold. A flustered Hillya demands to know what he's doing there. Unbothered, Arpt informs her he's already dismissed the servants. He pulls her closer, his intentions becoming clear. He calmly reminds her that it's their first night together as husband and wife, leaving Hillya completely speechless as he leans in with a smirk. Flustered, Hillya questions what Arpt is talking about. She insists their agreement didn't include this and demands he let her go. As she pushes him away, she trips backward, landing near the bed. Unfazed, Arpt observes her on the floor. He notes she's more calculating than he thought, cynically calling her clumsy fall an attempt to lead him to the bed. Before Hillya can process his words, he leans down over her, closing the distance between them as she looks on in shock. Arpt leans over her, reminding Hillya that she must know what married couples do on their first night. Realizing the situation is escalating, Hillya panics. Just as he moves closer, she yells for him to wait. With a firm push, she creates distance between them, insisting there's been a misunderstanding because of their vague verbal agreement. Seizing control, Hillya declares that their immediate priority isn't what he's suggesting. Instead, they're going to write a proper contract to clearly define their relationship. Hillya slides a freshly written contract across the table, asking Arpt if he has any objections. He scans the document, noting the main terms. They must act as a couple in public, respect privacy but remain faithful, and, most importantly, grant an immediate divorce if one requests it. Arpt zeroes in on that last clause, questioning why she'd agree to a divorce right when she could become empress. Hillya declares it proves her intentions are pure. Unimpressed, Arpt simply asks why she feels the need to prove that, leaving her completely stunned. Hillya is completely thrown by his cold response. She thought the divorce clause was a good thing for him. So what's the problem? Her mind flashes back through her past lives. She recalls the grief-stricken emperor, tormented by guilt over his son's fate. He had confessed that Arpt had a woman he loved. Rumors of this mysterious person existed in every timeline. The divorce clause was Hillya's considerate way of giving him an escape route for when he found her again. Annoyed by his reaction, she finally just asks him what he's staring at. Arpt snaps Hillya from her thoughts, again demanding to know why she included the divorce clause. He cynically asks if it's just insurance, so she can back out later. Offended, Hillya retorts that he shouldn't come thanking her for it down the line. Unfazed, Arpt flips her logic, asking what she'll do if he ends up dissatisfied with the clause instead. He then proposes a counteroffer. If he dislikes it, they will delete it. But if she's right and he is grateful, her alimony will be substantial. To sweeten his counteroffer, Arpt declares he will also give Hillya a detached palace. Her irritation vanishes in an instant as she enthusiastically accepts the deal. After all, who would refuse such a huge windfall? Later that night, Arpt reflects on their strange interaction. Hillya was bold when she came to him with her audacious request, yet she gets so flustered by something he just said for fun. His investigation into her past revealed nothing unusual, which only makes her more of an enigma he can't seem to figure out. Alone in his chambers, Arpt reflects on the perplexing woman he just married. He remembers how she didn't flinch when she first threatened him. During their hard 3-day journey, she persevered like a seasoned soldier, despite seeming as delicate as any other noble. He concludes she's a calculating woman whose true intentions are impossible to grasp. The only time she seemed transparent was around her knight, Betlian. Logically, Arpt should use this weakness, yet the thought only irritates him, and he can't understand why. Arpt's thoughts drift to a dark time from his past. He remembers being chained and weak in a damp cell. An enraged Ludwig Kieln stood before him, demanding he get up. When Arpt refused to move, Ludwig's fury intensified. He forcefully grabbed the prince by the hair, trying to make him submit. He screamed at him to raise his head, to look at him. Despite his dire situation, Arpt met the aggression with a cold, defiant glare, his silence a greater challenge than any words. The enraged noble is none other than Ludwig. He seethes at the prisoner, blaming him for the humiliation he suffered because the bride wasn't protected. He lands another brutal blow, but his tantrum is cut short by a familiar voice. Evangeline struts in, telling Ludwig she doesn't have time for his games. She drops a bombshell. Her brother, Arpid, is bringing Hillya to the capital. She holds up a report from her mother's informants, detailing their exact route. A desperate Ludwig immediately demands she give him the papers. From a distance, Evangeline watches Ludwig, a smug look on her face. She feels she was anxious over nothing, since he came crawling to her on his own. She finds him utterly pathetic, a detail she doesn't recall from the original story. Pushing aside concerns that she's twisted the plot too much, her resolve hardens. Her mother has given her imperial knights. It doesn't matter what happens, she will make Ludwig her ally, confident that in the end, she will have everything in her hands. On the vast Artanua plains, a furious Grand Duke Ludwig leads a thunderous charge. He shouts at his knights to quicken their pace, vowing to reclaim his stolen bride from the outer temple ahead. This power trip is courtesy of Evangeline, who secured the Empress's elite imperial knights for him. Leading this prestigious unit makes Ludwig feel like he has finally become the real crown prince. This desperate pursuit is fueled by a deep, lifelong inferiority complex he harbored toward the actual crown prince, Arpt. Ludwig's bitter rivalry with Arpt runs deep. From the line of succession to his skills with a sword, Arpt was the perfect heir who always outshone him, shattering Ludwig's fragile pride. Now, with the convenient excuse of his bride being stolen, all that suppressed rage is unleashed. Fueled by a lifetime of feeling second best, Ludwig barrels toward Arpt's location with dark intentions. Spotting an extravagant carriage up ahead, he instantly recognizes it. He bellows at his knights to stop it, certain that his rival and Hillya are inside. Confident that Arpt and Hillya are inside, Ludwig smirks at his rival's brazenness. He declares this mistake will be Arpt's last, finally clearing the path for him to become crown prince. As the knights surround the target, Ludwig dismounts and confidently strides to the carriage door. He throws it open, calling for Hillya with a look of obsessive victory, claiming he has searched for her for so long. But his triumph instantly vanishes. The lavish coach is completely empty. He's been played for a fool. Meanwhile, at the Empress's palace, Evangeline has tea with Empress Isabel, but her mind is elsewhere. A deep sense of unease settles in as she sips her tea. None of this was supposed to happen according to the original story she knows. In that version of events, Arpt was meant to perish from his madness, and Hillya was fated to meet her end after Ludwig took everything. Now, these two unconnected people are suddenly married. Evangeline wonders if Hillya's status as the female lead is powerful enough to completely rewrite their destiny. A cold dread washes over Evangeline. She questions if the story is designed to give Hillya a happy ending no matter what. If things continue on this path, Ludwig will never get his hands on the Delphine estate, and her own meticulously crafted plans will be ruined. She forces herself to calm down, reminding herself that as a possessor, she has the power to change fate. She recalls how unimpressive the original novel's leads were. Yet another thought now occupies her mind. She can't stop thinking about Arpid. Evangeline remembers reading the original novel and finding the main characters totally lame. Since Arpt was just a minor character with barely any screen time, she never gave him a second thought. But that all changed when she actually entered the story and saw him in person. She was completely captivated. Still, she knew his fate. Convinced he was doomed to fall to his madness, she decided it was pointless to pursue him. But now, a strange feeling creeps in. The thought of Arpt belonging to another woman is so unsettling that the teacup in her hand cracks under the pressure. As Evangeline frets over the unexpected turn of events, the Empress calmly tells her to stop. She reassures her daughter that Hillya's abduction is actually a blessing in disguise, giving them the perfect justification to act. She reveals they have already spread vicious rumors to ruin Hillya and Arpid's reputations. She confidently declares that no one, not even the Emperor, will ever recognize their union. With a smile, she promises Evangeline that she is destined to become the Empress, and she will personally ensure it happens. The Empress dotes on Evangeline, calling her a precious treasure, completely unaware the girl isn't her real daughter. Hillya remembers the truth. Evangeline is an imposter from another world. Despite her reservations about the Empress's reliability, Hillya resolves to use her. Suddenly, chaos erupts as a guard announces that Prince Arpid and Hillya have brazenly returned to the palace. Outside, crowds point and whisper, remembering the bride who was dramatically snatched from her own wedding ceremony just a week ago, leaving everyone in shock. As they arrive at the palace, vicious rumors are already swirling. The court gossips that the crown prince's famous madness drove him to abduct Hillya. Unfazed, Arpid makes a move that defies all expectations. He halts before the legendary Gate of Glory, an entrance reserved only for national heroes and official royal processions. To demand its opening after a supposed kidnapping is an audacious power play. A stunned official can only stammer, addressing Arpid as the crown prince, completely caught off guard by the bold command. Arp tells the stunned official that since his identity is clear, there's no need to waste words. His command is simple: open the gate. The official stammers, completely flustered by the prince's sudden return. Unfazed by the questions, Arpt firmly takes Hillya's hand and warns the man not to make him repeat himself. Stepping in, Hillya solidifies their power play. She coldly questions how long he plans to obstruct the crown prince and his new consort, publicly declaring her rightful place by Arpt's side. Riding through the palace grounds on a single horse, Arpt asks Hillya if she's satisfied with their grand entrance. She admits his approach was bolder than she expected, but the result is perfect. It was a parade publicly announcing them as husband and wife. When she questions riding inside the palace, Arpt smirks. He says he needs to show her off everywhere, just as she wished. Hillya is impressed by his sharp intuition, but her thoughts are cut short. From a distance, Evangeline watches their procession, her expression cold and calculating. Hillya's satisfaction vanishes when she spots a familiar face in the crowd, Evangeline. A chilling memory surfaces, Evangeline's cruel smile and her final, mocking words from Hillya's past life. The sudden fear is overwhelming, and she begins to tremble despite her resolve to escape that fate this time. Her distress doesn't go unnoticed. Arpt's sharp gaze catches her reaction. Leaning in close, he softly asks if she's all right, pointing out that she's shaking. His voice pulls Hillya from her dark thoughts and back to the present. Arpt leans in, gently touching her forehead, remarking that she doesn't have a fever, but has never seen her complexion look so pale. Hillya insists she's fine, determined not to show any weakness after coming this far. Unconvinced, Arpt bluntly tells her she definitely does not look well. Before she can protest, he swiftly lifts her from the horse and into his arms. Hillya lets out a startled cry, completely surprised by his sudden, protective action as he begins to carry her through the palace grounds himself. As he carries her through the grounds, Arpt loudly announces that his bride is far too frail to ride any longer. Hillya is momentarily stunned by a sudden, embarrassing display of affection. She wonders why he's acting this way, but then she spots Evangeline watching them from the crowd, her face frozen in shock. Hillya instantly understands it's a calculated performance. Realizing he did it on purpose for their enemies, her panic subsides. Secure in his arms, Hillya feels her uneasy heart finally settle as they leave their rival fuming. As Arpt and Hillya depart, Evangeline stands frozen in disbelief, wondering if she was just openly mocked. Nearby, Empress Isabel fumes over Ludwig's incompetence, annoyed he couldn't even handle securing his own bride. She turns to Evangeline, coldly telling her to give up any foolish feelings for Arpt. The Empress warns that unlike Ludwig, the Crown Prince will never be a controllable puppet. Grabbing Evangeline's hand, she orders her to focus on their goals, not her emotions. Evangeline quietly agrees, submitting to her mother's command. Evangeline tries to dismiss her feelings for Arpt, telling herself he was always an unattainable prize. But her frustration boils over. She fumes over why Hillya, the story's original protagonist, gets everything so easily. With events twisting away from the original plot, Evangeline fears a terrible ending now awaits her instead. This grim prospect solidifies her resolve. Deciding she can no longer just sit back and watch, she vows to abandon her old plans and finally take direct action to secure her own destiny. Inside the Emperor's grand audience chamber, Hillya and Arpt walk toward the throne. With a perfect curtsy, Hillya introduces herself as the Crown Prince's wife. He sternly reminds her of her engagement to his nephew, Ludwig, an arrangement he personally approved. He angrily accuses them of disregarding his authority with their scandalous marriage. Unfazed, Hillya calmly denies the charge, stating that they never intended to disrespect him. She stands firm beside Arpt, ready to make her case before the unimpressed ruler of the empire. The Emperor gave Hillya an out, asking if Arpt's madness was to blame and promising to help her if she was forced. But Hillya firmly refused, stating she had no wish to annul the marriage. She then revealed a shocking truth. Her union with the prince was already complete in every sense. The Emperor was stunned, demanding to know what possessed them to finalize the temple rites so quickly. Hillya calmly explained it was for love, claiming Arpt fell for her at first sight, just like the Empire's founding myth. Hillya clarifies that their official position is a reenactment of the Empire's founding myth, the marriage robbery between the dragon and the princess. The Emperor's eyes narrow, asking if this romantic tale is just an excuse. Hillya calmly confirms it is. She then changes tactics, boldly asking if he genuinely believes Ludwig is fit to be the next emperor. Taken aback, the ruler demands to know why she would think he supports Ludwig. Hillya reminds him that he was the one who arranged her marriage to the Grand Duke, implying it was a strategic move to create a rival for the Crown Prince. Hillya challenges the Emperor directly, asking how much he truly knows about his nephew, Ludwig. The ruler's face darkens, taking her question as an insult to his judgment. Hillya shrewdly sidesteps, stating she cannot comment on matters she doesn't know. However, she follows up with a powerful assertion. She claims to know Ludwig intimately and with unwavering confidence declares that the Grand Duke is by no means fit to be an emperor. Her audacious statement silences the entire room, putting the Emperor on the back foot. The Emperor, unimpressed by her declaration, demands Hillya justify her claim that Ludwig is unfit to rule. Hillya confidently agrees. Drawing on her years of intimate knowledge as his former fiancé, she dissects his character. She explains that Ludwig is incredibly narrow-minded and consumed by a deep-seated inferiority complex, especially towards the Crown Prince. While his ambition is vast, his actual abilities are laughably inadequate. She concludes that men like him, as the Emperor knows, never achieve true greatness. To back up her claim, Hillya provides a damning example of Ludwig's leadership. She recounts how a steward once embezzled funds and mismanaged his lands, only for Ludwig to rehire the man a year later. The reason was pure manipulation. An honest replacement had advised against raising taxes after a poor harvest, but the corrupt steward was easily blackmailed into agreeing with Ludwig's plan. Hillya insists this petty corruption is a preview of how he would handle the entire empire. The Emperor admits her point is valid, but then stuns her by declaring his judgment will not change. Hillya pressed her advantage, asking if a man who lets personal greed dictate public matters is truly fit to rule. The Emperor coldly replied that Ludwig was still a better choice than someone who goes mad and harms people indiscriminately. At that, Arpt realized the Emperor's true fear. He understood his father was worried about the infamous dragon's madness. Hillya stepped forward, taking Arpt's hand reassuringly. She told the Emperor there was nothing to worry about. As he demanded an explanation, she made a stunning declaration. The Crown Prince's madness was already completely cured. Hillya calmly explained that Arpt had been cured from the moment he met her. She revealed a stunning vision she had the night before her original wedding. The Empire's great founding dragon, Lord Ardennes, appeared in her dream and gave her a personal blessing. He promised that as long as she remained by Arp's side, the dragon's descendant would never suffer from the madness. The emperor scoffed, completely unconvinced by her tale of divine intervention. He then issued a sharp challenge. If her story was true, she must swear to it before a priest, using a sacred relic. Internally, Hillya admitted the dragon blessing was a lie, but her ability to cure Arpt was absolutely real. When the emperor demanded proof, Hillya confidently shut him down. She claimed there was no need for a relic because the dragon itself would provide the evidence. To make it happen, she made an audacious request. She wanted the sacred hall of Ardennes for their wedding. The emperor was stunned, questioning if she understood the hall's importance. Hillya coolly confirmed she did, reminding him it was where he held his own coronation. Hillya knew her request was beyond bold. The Hall of Ardennes was the most sacred place in the empire, and using it for a wedding seemed absurd. But that was exactly the point. It would give their marriage undeniable legitimacy. From his throne, the emperor simply ordered them to come closer. Hillya tensed, wondering if her bluff had been called. As they approached, a transparent barrier of light instantly formed around them. The emperor explained it was to prevent anyone from listening in, then leaned forward and demanded she tell him the real truth. Within the private barrier, the emperor questioned Hillya's motives, wondering if she was being threatened. She stood her ground, declaring she was simply following the great dragon's will. The emperor was visibly troubled and unconvinced, placing a hand on Arp's shoulder. In that moment, Hillya saw the truth. He didn't hate his son. He was a king terrified of what Arp's madness could do to the empire. Cutting through the pretense, she looked him in the eye and asked if he truly cherished his son more than anyone. The emperor demands to know what Hillya is trying to say. With unwavering confidence, she tells him she knows his greatest wish is to save his son. Hillya then kneels, asking for just one chance to prove she can cure the prince. The emperor is visibly shaken by her directness. A painful memory surfaces of his dying wife, the former empress. On her deathbed, she had begged him to save their child. She didn't want their son to suffer the same tragic fate she did, and her final words still echo in his memory. With the emperor's difficult test finally over, Hillya lets out a sigh of relief. Her high-stakes gamble paid off. He not only consented to her marriage in the Hall of Ardennes, but also officially referred to her as Arpid's wife for the first time. Believing her greatest obstacle was cleared, she turns to leave. Her relief is cut short, however, when Ludwig appears. He rushes over, grabbing her arm and insisting they hurry back to their estate, leaving Hillya completely stunned by his audacity. Hillya's blood runs cold. It's Ludwig, the man from her nightmares. Her body freezes, and her mind is flooded with traumatic memories of his past betrayals. She wants to scream, but her voice is gone. Ludwig reaches for her, smugly announcing that the carriage is ready for his bride. But before he can touch her, another hand intercepts his arm with a sharp slap. The crown prince Arpt now stands protectively beside Hillya. He looks Ludwig dead in the eye and tells him to start addressing her with proper courtesy. Before Ludwig can drag her away, Arpid moves between them, shielding Hillya. He calmly tells his rival to show proper formality to his bride. This sends Ludwig into a rage, and he shouts that Hillya is his wife and that Arpid will be punished. Unimpressed, Arpid coldly asks where he sees a wife. A sharp sound cuts the air. Ludwig screams in pain, his hand completely immobilized by Arpid's overwhelming grip. Arpid's message was clear. Hillya belonged to him, and he would not be challenged. With Ludwig a mess on the floor, one of his lackeys tried to call Arpt shameless, but the prince just ignored him. Staring down at the pathetic duke, Arpt calmly asked Hillya if he should break his legs next. Playing her part perfectly, Hillya stopped him, reminding him they were in the emperor's presence. Thinking he had an opening, Ludwig gasped that the emperor would punish this lawlessness. But Arpt delivered the final blow, revealing his majesty had already granted them the sacred hall of Ardennes for their wedding reception. Absolute domination. With his point brutally made, Arpid releases Ludwig's hand and pulls Hillya protectively to his side. He coolly informs his rival that he might send a wedding invitation, but only if his wife permits it. Ludwig stammers, unable to believe the emperor would ever consent to this union. Just then, Evangeline rushes in, demanding to know if the rumors about her brother are true. Hillya observes her enemy's expression. It's not just shock, but a glare of pure disbelief, a look Hillya knows all too well. Hillya instantly recognizes the desperate look in Evangeline's eyes. It's the same raw desire she once showed for the Empress's throne, not the smug satisfaction she had when she stole Ludwig. A horrifying realization dawns on Hillya. In her past lives, Evangeline never truly loved Ludwig. He was just a prize. Her genuine affection, the target of her obsession, has always been Arpt. This shatters Hillya. If the love she was betrayed for was never real, then what exactly was the point of all her suffering? The Empress's aide confirmed the shocking news. His Majesty had officially blessed the union and granted them the sacred hall of artness. Playing her part, Empress Isabel smiled, remarking that the Emperor had acknowledged their love. A nearby noble lady, who was about to deliver the news, stopped dead in her tracks, utterly stunned. With the political victory secured, the Empress coolly postponed the formal audience. Arpt then took Hillya's hand, declaring that his wife was tired and it was time for them to leave, solidifying their win. Back in their private quarters, Hillya's first concern is for Arpt, asking if his arm is alright after he carried her. He coolly states he's fine. Hillya then thanks him for handling Ludwig, but Arpt casually dismisses it, saying the man simply got on his nerves. His indifference makes Hillya ponder their situation. She begins to question if Arpt has any idea about Evangeline's true, obsessive feelings for him. Judging by his behavior, he seems completely uninterested in her, leaving Hillya to wonder what he really thinks of his stepsister. With Hillya's questioning over, Arpt decides it's his turn. He asks her directly if she truly received Artenis's blessing, a crucial detail she never mentioned in their deal. Hillya immediately panics, as this was a lie she invented on the spot to convince the Emperor. Arpt presses, asking if her promise to make him Emperor was based on this so-called blessing. Flustered, she blurts out that it was all a lie. Getting close, Arpt calmly notes that she lies quite naturally, leaving Hillya to stammer that she had no other choice. Hillya breathes a sigh of relief, knowing her plan worked. She reminds herself to be more careful with her words around Arpt. She can't afford to let her guard down. She reassures him that her core promise to cure his madness is genuine, the very reason he accepted their deal. Arpt seems to agree but shelves the topic for later. He suddenly grabs her wrist and leans in, his expression intense. He demands to know what the unique scent on her is, stating he's never encountered it before. Arpt leans in, his voice low as he tells Hillya her scent makes him feel strange, like he wants to completely devour her. Hillya panics, wondering if his infamous madness is already kicking in. Pushing him back, she nervously jokes that she knew about his condition but didn't realize it included a taste for human flesh. Unamused, Arpt flatly denies having such vulgar tastes. Flustered, she claims she just misunderstood what he meant. Though she tries to laugh it off as a relief, the intense atmosphere between them remains dangerously thick. Hillya tries to change the subject, remarking that as future emperor, he'll have the love of his subjects. She cheekily adds that rumors about his madness would be bad for his image. But Arpt isn't deterred. He asks if the love of the people is the only kind he can receive. Before she can fully process his question, he steps closer. Reminding her that he is both crown prince and her husband, he declares with a serious gaze that he cannot do without his wife's affection. Arpt leans over Hillya, his voice low and intense. He reminds her that he isn't just the crown prince, he's her husband, and he can't have a wife lacking affection. He demands she promise him her trust. Completely thrown, Hillya stammers that it's a given, since everyone already believes they're a perfect couple. Seizing on her words, Arpt pins her with a serious look. If that's the case, he says, then she must tell him the absolute truth from now on. He asks directly if her promise to stop his madness is completely unrelated to her fake blessing. Hillya's mind races. She realizes Arpt is using his intense stare to pry out her secrets, and for a moment, it almost works. Snapping out of it, she coolly states that her promise to cure him and the fake blessing are completely unrelated. She reminds him the blessing was just a clever story to get the Emperor's approval for their marriage. Unimpressed, Arpt presses her about the proof she promised to show. With a sly smile, Hillya declares that's a secret. Frustrated, he asks if anything about her isn't a secret, and she cheerfully confirms that everything is. Arpt tells Hillya that a woman with too many secrets isn't his type. Unfazed, she cheekily replies that she'll just have to try harder in other areas. She can't reveal her past lives, so she turns the tables, reminding him that a husband must also have trust. Later, the Emperor demands to know why Arpt committed the madness of stealing a bride. Arpt admits he isn't entirely sure himself, shocking his father. His mind flashes back to Hillya's promise, the one thing he's betting on, that she alone can save him from his madness. Arpt internally admits that Hillya's wild claim has zero proof. Still, he has a powerful gut feeling that with her by his side, he won't succumb to the madness that claimed his mother. This sliver of hope is the real reason he committed the reckless act of stealing a bride. A few days later, at the Empress's palace, the court ladies are already buzzing. The Empress remarks that Hillya is far more resourceful than expected, securing the sacred hall immediately. Another lady dismisses it as simple favoritism from the Emperor. The court ladies, led by Baroness Villern, are on edge. They know the palace is a political minefield, with everyone split between Arpt and Ludwig. Picking the wrong side means social ruin. One lady wonders what they should even call Hillya now. Before anyone can answer, Evangeline sweeps in. She announces the Empress is unwell and that she will be hosting instead. Brushing off the immediate flattery, she puts one woman on the spot, demanding an answer to a previous question. Evangeline is clearly here to run the show. Evangeline immediately shuts down a lady who dares to suggest calling Hillya the crown princess. She scoffs at the idea, calling the marriage disgraceful since it was born from a kidnapping. Playing the victim, she dramatically cries about how sorry she feels for poor Ludwig. Her posse quickly gangs up on the lone dissenter, accusing her of disrespecting the Grand Duke. They argue that the Emperor only permitted a party, not the actual marriage, masterfully twisting the truth to isolate anyone who might support Hillya. Evangeline's crocodile tears successfully sway the court ladies. The lady who spoke up freezes in terror, realizing she badly misread the room. Evangeline, seeing her chance, smirks and pretends it was all a misunderstanding. She claims the poor woman was just confused about what title to use. But this is just a show. Suddenly, two maids seize the dissenter, Lady Luce, who desperately begs for a chance to explain herself to the Empress. With the problem handled, Evangeline coolly apologizes for the scene, adding that she feels much calmer now. She then pivots, asking her clique how poor Grand Duke Ludwig is doing. Evangeline puts on a performance, claiming Ludwig is so heartbroken that the Empress is too upset to attend Hillya's banquet. The ladies instantly understand the unspoken threat. Baroness Villain spells it out with a cold stare. Don't you dare show your face at a party the Empress isn't attending. This is a direct order to boycott Hillya and socially isolate her. Confident her message has been received, Evangeline wipes away a fake tear, smirking. She believes no one in high society would have the guts to defy the Empress. While an aide tries to deliver a crucial report on trade trends, Crown Prince Arpt is completely lost in thought. He can't stop thinking about Hillya, finding her both annoying and far too secretive. He reflects on how she plays with people, hiding behind jokes with an insolence that should infuriate him. A flash of her smug, confident face appears in his mind. But as his aide waits for an answer, Arpt wonders why he doesn't have the urge to simply get her out of the way. For a man ruled by a violent curse, this strange feeling is a puzzle. Arpt's aide, Ulkin, asks what has captured the prince's attention. Clearly distracted, Arpt admits he wasn't listening and orders him to repeat the report. The sharp aide, understanding his master perfectly, changes his approach. He decides to start with the topic Arpt is really interested in, Lady Delphine's recent activities. Ulkin confirms that, as ordered, he has reliable people watching her every move. But Arpt cuts him off, stating that the title Lady Delphine is starting to bother him. With a smirk, he tells his aide to start calling her the Crown Princess. With a smirk, Arpt declares that the title Lady Delphine is starting to bother him. His aide, however, is all about the rules. He points out that even though Hillya is now the prince's wife and their union is complete, he can't officially call her the Crown Princess yet. The Emperor hasn't given his formal approval. Bravely changing the subject, the aide asks if the whole abduction marriage was just a calculated move. Or, he probes, did Arpt actually fall in love at first sight? Arpt simply looks up and asks, and what if I did? The aide, Ulkin, decides he's heard enough. He dramatically pulls out a letter, declaring his resignation. He yells that if Arpt is acting on feelings, his madness must be back, and he's finding a new job. But before he can even present it, Arpt casually flicks his finger, and a spark of magic burns the paper to a crisp. Arpt asks what he thinks he's doing, as a quick flashback shows this is a recurring dramatic act. The real question on both their minds is how Hillya managed to secure the sacred hall from the Emperor for their wedding. Ulkin can't wrap his head around how Hillya secured the sacred hall. He tells Arpt it's almost like she brainwashed the Emperor, and the wildest part is that it sounds totally possible. Adjusting his glasses, the aide declares they'll have to serve her and watch her closely to figure out the truth. Arpt cuts to the chase, asking if this means Ulkin will keep calling her Lady Delphine. As a compromise, Ulkin suggests the title, Mistress of the Ivory Chamber. Tired of arguing, Arpt just tells him to do as he sees fit. Hillya finds herself consoling the distraught Baroness Villain, who's in absolute tears over a major social screw-up. The Baroness thanks Hillya profusely for her kindness, completely blown away by the support. But as Hillya offers a comforting shoulder, her expression hardens internally. A flashback reveals the cold, hard truth. In her previous life, this very same Baroness was one of the snakes who betrayed her. Now, Hillya sees the woman for who she truly is, someone who would sell anyone out to protect their own social status. Game on. Hillya's mind flashes back to a hauntingly familiar scene. In a past life, Baroness Villain had put on the exact same tearful performance, acting terrified after supposedly falling out of Evangeline's favor. A naive Hillya had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker, offering comfort and trying to become her friend.
But it was all a lie.
The Baroness was secretly Evangeline's spy from the very beginning, and their so-called public spat was just a staged drama. Once Filern earned her trust, she reported Hillya's every move, ultimately framing her for crimes she didn't commit. A cold thought crosses Hillya's mind. It looks like this time, Baroness Filern is the one getting played by Evangeline, and Hillya is absolutely here for it. She remembers her past self, naively asking the Baroness to be her friend, so desperate for an ally in high society. But that version of Hillya is long gone. Now, her eyes glow with a dangerous new plan. Her new motto is to keep friends close, but keep enemies who can be used as bait even closer. Meanwhile, back in the ivory chamber, someone approaches Arpt, asking for a word. The mysterious figure turns out to be Hillya, who finds Arpt striking a pose with a book and a new pair of glasses. She immediately teases him, asking if he put them on because he heard a rumor that her type is an intellectual man. Hillya calls his bluff, pointing out that someone with dragon blood has perfect eyesight. He's clearly just trying to look good for her. Changing the subject, Arpt offers to read a passage from his book. His voice is deep and serious as he recites a line, "My one and only flower, my bride." The book's words conjure a vivid scene of a golden dragon speaking to a fated woman. It declared that the moment it saw her, it knew she would make it whole, and an instinct commanded it to claim her. Snapping back to the present, Hillya closes the book and teases Arpt, saying he has a romantic side for being so moved. She privately chalks it up to his strong dragon blood, giving him that kind of intense personality. Mid-thought, her eyes widen. She feels a gaze on her and looks up to find Arpt staring intently, leaving her flustered. Hillya is curious, asking Arpt why he likes such a romantic passage when most boys prefer stories of epic battles. Dropping his tough guy facade, Arpt gets real. He confesses that he always wished for someone who could make him whole, believing that person could be the key to overcoming his madness. He relates to the dragon in the story, wondering if he too would be able to recognize his fated partner at a single glance. Hillya is left speechless by this rare show of vulnerability, a soft thought crossing her mind of how lovely they would be. With a surprising show of vulnerability, Arpt drops his stoic facade. He confesses his deepest fear, that he has waited so long for his fated partner that he might resent them for all the pain he endured alone. At that exact moment, Hillya has a jolt of realization herself, believing she has already met the one for her. Her gaze falls on Arpt, whose intense stare makes her panic. A thought races through her mind. Does he know? Has he somehow figured out that she is the legendary bride with the power to stabilize his madness? The book's words conjure a vivid scene of a golden dragon speaking to a fated woman. It declared that the moment it saw her, it knew she would make it whole, and an instinct commanded it to claim her. Snapping back to the present, Hillya closes the book and teases Arpt, saying he has a romantic side for being so moved. She privately chalks it up to his strong dragon blood, giving him that kind of intense personality. Mid-thought, her eyes widen. She feels a gaze on her and looks up to find Arpt staring intently, leaving her flustered. Hillya's mind flashes back to the legend of Artemis, a dragon who waged a full-blown war just to claim his fated partner, the dragon's bride. But she didn't learn this tale from a storybook. She learned it during her third life, a time when she was a death row prisoner, framed for treason. Before her execution, she was handed over to the magic tower for horrific experiments. Arpt was also there, exiled and captured. The tower's master, obsessed with controlling Arpt's madness, used innocent people in his tests, and Hillya was one of his victims. In her past life, Hillya was pushed far beyond her breaking point. The endless, cruel experiments at the magic tower had nearly destroyed her mind. It was then that the tower master, Gaspal, had a wicked realization. He cackled, announcing he'd finally figured out why the maddened Arpt never laid a hand on her. While the prince in his berserk state had violently dispatched other test subjects, he always left Hillya alive. Gaspal explained it was because she had a unique quality that he needed. This suddenly changed how Hillya saw the monster in chains. In her horrifying past, the tower master cackled at his breakthrough. He taunted Hillya, noting that while the mad prince was a beast to everyone else, he never touched her. Now understanding her unique effect on the dragon's blood, Gaspal promised to study her even more closely. He gave her a chilling new name, the Dragon's Bride. This memory was the very reason Hillya approached Arpt in her current life. His refusal to harm her back then was her ultimate bargaining chip. She knew it was a double-edged sword, making her both valuable and vulnerable. Caught in an awkward silence, Hillya's mind races for a way out. She decides to play it cool, breaking the tension by formally addressing the man before her as Mr. Arpad Estrid. But her sudden formality doesn't go unnoticed. Arpad immediately asks if she's decided to stop calling him Your Highness. Relieved that his madness isn't flaring up, Hillya admits she was worried. Arpad presses closer, his expression unreadable. He poses a cryptic question, asking how she would feel if someone she'd been waiting for finally appeared. Would she love them, or would she resent them for the suffering she endured during the long wait? With a brilliant smile, Hillya calmly responds that his feelings are not for her to decide. She explains that whether he chooses to love or resent this person he's waited for is entirely his own choice. Her clever answer leaves Arpad momentarily speechless. He accuses her of having a knack for dodging questions and demands a real answer. Unrelenting, he turns the tables, asking what she wants to do. Hillya is inwardly relieved. He doesn't realize she's the one he's talking about, but his intense focus keeps her on edge. Hillya poses a curious question, asking Arpad how he'd feel about someone who could magically force another to fall in love. Before he can answer, she firmly states she would hate a being with such power. Arpad calmly agrees, explaining that having his emotions manipulated would be unacceptable and he'd have no choice but to despise them. Hearing this, Hillya visibly relaxes. With a sly smile, she points out that since she can't do that, he has no reason to hate her. Arpad quietly considers her logic and concedes the point. The next morning, Hillya gets her makeup done, but she's running on empty. It's hard to get any rest when the crown prince stares at you all night long. While the maids whisper about how close the newlyweds must be, Hillya ignores them. She has more important things on her mind. Turning to the prince's personal maid, Essia, she asks for an update on her allies. Essia reports that her maid Annie is safe because the Delphine estate is in total chaos. Relieved to hear it, Hillya immediately presses for news about Sir Betrayals. Essia delivers some shocking news. Ludwig is at Hillya's family estate and has thrown her loyal knight, Sir Betrayals, into the dungeon. Hillya's blood runs cold. This makes zero sense. Realizing her allies are in danger, she orders Essia to immediately send a rescue party. But the maid pushes back, asking if the crown prince approved this command. Hillya's eyes narrow as she puts the maid in her place, confirming Essia works for the prince. With icy authority, Hillya dismisses the maid, telling her to go back to her master. Hillya drops all pretense of politeness. She tells the prince's maid she doesn't need anyone's permission to handle matters concerning her own people. Done arguing, she bypasses Essia and directly commands the other two maids to go rescue Annie and Sir Betrayals. Internally, Hillya knows she can't be bogged down by Arp's staff. She has a huge banquet in 1 month, and her entire future depends on its success. Knowing the Empress and Evangeline are plotting her social ruin, Hillya hardens her resolve. She must gather her allies and completely crush her enemies. With no allies to call on, Hillya worries about the upcoming banquet. Just then, a supposedly friendly face, Lady Filern, shows up acting concerned. She eagerly offers to help distribute the invitations, promising a huge turnout. But this is all a nasty trap. Filern's secret plan is to humiliate Hillya by making her seem desperate. Hillya, however, is playing 4D chess. She knows Filern is a spy for Evangeline and happily hands over the invites. Her plan hits a snag when Filern questions the official seal, asking if the emperor himself approved it. Hillya deflects the question with a subtle flex. She explains that while the seal isn't officially recognized yet, the crown prince personally delivered it and told her it was fine to use. She then casually asks Filern for her opinion on some banquet ideas, and the lady eagerly agrees. Later that night, Filern reports back to a smug Evangeline. She confirms Hillya used the official seal, and Evangeline sneers at her audacity. Filern angrily points out that only the emperor can authorize a royal seal. Evangeline couldn't agree more, concluding Hillya is just a desperate fool. But Hillya isn't desperate. She's playing a whole different game. She calmly reveals her master plan to Arpad. She's going to spread a rumor that the emperor himself might attend the banquet. The prince is floored by her sheer guts. Back with the villains, Filern confirms the rumor to Evangeline, convinced Hillya is just panicking because no one will show up. Evangeline smirks, admitting Hillya has some fight in her. But she's still certain of her victory, contemptuously ripping the invitations to pieces, believing Hillya's social downfall is inevitable. As the date for the wedding banquet draws near, high society is abuzz with mockery. The nobles gossip that Hillya is a desperate liar for claiming the emperor would attend, gleefully imagining the huge hall sitting empty. But then, a real disaster strikes. A lady bursts in announcing that Marquise Quinable, the empress's closest friend, is hosting a rival ball on the exact same day. To make matters worse, she's using a hall in the empress's palace. As her supporters panic, the two-faced Lady Filern swears to work even harder to help. While her enemies celebrate her apparent downfall, Hillya is absolutely thrilled. She knows Evangeline and the Empress must think she's a foolish girl, crying over the very rumors she started. But in reality, their countermove was the bait she wanted them to take. It's made the stage for her plan even bigger, and she finds the whole situation exhilarating. Her good mood is cut short, however, when she's told her loyal aides, Annie and Evangeline, can't be brought to her. The maids apologize profusely, confirming that someone is actively trying to isolate her. Hillya isn't even surprised by the betrayal. She expected it. With Ludwig still acting like he owns her family's home, she knew the staff wouldn't follow her orders. But this is more than just an insult. It's a political attack. If she can't even manage her own household, critics will say she's unfit to be crown princess. Realizing she has to strike first to secure her authority, Hillya decides on her next move. After changing into a fresh gown, she goes to see the one person who can help, the crown prince. An aide urgently reports to Crown Prince Arpt, questioning if he'll let Hillya's recent power play stand. He points out she's driving out the prince's staff and can't be trusted. But Arpt sees it differently. He calmly states that her actions actually make him trust her more. He explains that a woman who can't figure out who to keep and who to dismiss isn't fit to be a princess, let alone an empress. Right on cue, the doors swing open and Hillya herself strides in, confidently calling his name. Arpt's aide watched Hillya's late-night arrival, assuming she was there to beg the prince for help with her family matters. But Hillya's request was totally unexpected. She boldly informed the prince that he would have to sleep alone tonight. Completely baffled, Arpt asked for an explanation. Hillya calmly stated that she must return to her family home to handle some business. Just as his aide tried to interrupt, Hillya made a surprising move, leaning in close to the prince and leaving both men utterly speechless. Hillya wishes Arpt a good night without her, asking if he understands. Then, she promptly turns to leave. While his aide panics, thinking their relationship is more intimate than it seems, Arpt springs into action. He grabs Hillya's arm, stopping her and demanding to know where she's going. Unfazed, she asks if she's now required to report her every move to him. Caught off guard by her confidence, the crown prince immediately lets go, admitting that he misspoke as she walks away, leaving him standing there. Arpt's aide watches in disbelief as the crown prince follows Hillya down the hall. He begins to question everything, wondering if this strategic partnership is actually a love marriage after all. The scene flashes back to the moment their deal was struck. Hillya had suddenly appeared before the notorious mercenary king, Gerald. Looking him straight in the eye, she calmly thanked him for accepting her audacious request so quickly. The masked leader stood silently as she set the stage for their grand deception, a plan that would shake the entire empire. With the deal now struck, the scene flashes back to their tense first meeting. Hillya notes the magic mask hiding Gerald's face, then boldly tells the mercenary king that she's disappointed in him. She explains that disappointment only comes from high expectations, turning his own judgment back on him. The masked leader scoffs, admitting he's aware of her little games. Unfazed, Hillya calmly reveals she knows he's been testing her from the start, and this is far from the first time. Her knowledge of his secret tests leaves him completely stunned. Hillya quickly figures out his game. Arpt was testing her from the very beginning, judging if she was truly worth the price. She understands his disappointment. Instead of reclaiming her family's power on her own, she sent out a distress signal. But Hillya isn't about to let him look down on her. With a smirk, she tells Crown Prince Arpt there's no need for such feelings. When he asks why, she sets the record straight. She didn't ask the prince for help. She hired Gerald, the king of mercenaries, for a job. Hillya flips the script on the mercenary king, pointing out that his tests are just wasting his own time. She lays out a brilliant win-win proposal. By hiring his mercenaries, she can solve her family problems. This gives Crown Prince Arpt the perfect cover to take down his political rivals without getting his hands dirty. Best of all, Gerald becomes a living legend, the mercenary powerful enough to make the imperial family kneel. With a confident smirk, she presents a bouquet as a contract, leaving the final choice to him. He accepts. The deal is sealed. Back at the mansion, Grand Duke Ludwig is completely falling apart. His aides scramble to help him, begging him to pull himself together, but he's lost in a spiral of fury. He shoves his men away, grabbing one by the collar with a wild look in his eyes. Ludwig furiously accuses the man of seeing him as a pathetic joke whose wife was just stolen. The terrified aide insists it isn't true, but the Grand Duke's paranoia is in full swing. The emotional outburst leaves him totally drained as he stumbles back, defeated by his public humiliation. Meanwhile, an old aide who betrayed Hillya for Ludwig is regretting his choices. He ignored Hillya's words to follow the Grand Duke, only to be treated like dirt. Later, he reports to Evangeline that Hillya has requested the return of her loyal servants, Annie and Evangeline. Evangeline scoffs at the demand. She reminds the aide that siding with Hillya is a bad bet, since her upcoming banquet is rumored to be a total failure. With a chilling smile, she gives a final warning. Neither she nor the Empress forgive traitors. The traitorous old butler stews in his regret, recalling how he got his position thanks to Evangeline after the suspicious ends of the previous duke and butler. He knows he's in too deep to switch sides now. His thoughts are shattered when a frantic maid bursts in. He snaps at her for being so loud, but she stammers out the shocking news. Lady Hillya has arrived. The butler freezes in disbelief as Hillya makes her grand entrance, looking regal and flanked by masked mercenaries. She coolly asks a servant where the Grand Duke is, ready to reclaim her power. An aide stops Hillya, demanding to know why she isn't looking for Ludwig. He insists she owes the Grand Duke an apology. The man claims that while she, a frail lady, couldn't have resisted being taken, Ludwig's pride was shattered in front of everyone. He paints a picture of a broken man, drinking to forget the public shame, and declares that Hillya must apologize. But as he speaks, a dark power builds around her. Hillya's true thought surfaces. Her only desire is to make Ludwig kneel. She snaps her fingers, stunning everyone. The traitor butler confronts Hillya, demanding to know what she thinks she's doing. But Hillya is done talking. She slams her heel down on his hand, forcing a cry of pain from the old man. As he stammers, calling her my lady, she coldly informs him that everything he believed was wrong. He is to address her by her proper title now, the crown princess of the empire. Before anyone can react, Gerald gives the order. His mercenaries seize the traitor to lock him away and move to secure the entire mansion. With the mansion being secured, one maid rushes to Hillya, complaining that other staff members had spoken ill of her. Hillya realizes the betrayal was widespread, with more than half the employees siding with her enemies. With ice in her voice, she commands the mercenaries to detain every single traitor. But as they're being dragged away, a familiar face appears. Her loyal maid, Annie, rushes forward with tears in her eyes. Hillya's cold demeanor melts instantly, and she stops Annie from kneeling, telling her that all that matters is that she's safe. The tender reunion is cut short when Annie delivers horrifying news. Sir Betrayals, one of Hillya's most loyal aides, has been found, but he's in terrible shape. Annie reveals that Grand Duke Ludwig had locked him away in the basement, and the results of his confinement were brutal. All the warmth drains from Hillya's face, replaced by pure, icy rage. Her hand clenches into a fist as she absorbs the cruelty done to her friend. With cold determination, she gives Annie a single, urgent command: take her to him right now. Hillya rushes down into the grim basement, her heart stopping at the sight before her. There, barely conscious and supported by one of Gerald's men, is Sir Betrayals. He's in a horrifying state. Hillya calls out his name, her voice trembling. Despite his condition, Betrayals' first words are of relief that she is safe. Even the masked Gerald is shocked, admitting to himself that this is far worse than he anticipated. He asks if Betrayals can even move, but the knight can only grunt in pain, proving he is anything but fine. Hillya tells the mercenary to freeze, realizing Betrayals' injuries are life-threatening. Before she can act, Gerald steps in, his voice cutting through the tension. He commands his men to get the knight to a physician immediately. Later, as a shaken Hillya walks up the stairs, Gerald stops her. He asks if she's all right, but his tone quickly turns serious. He wants to know if she had foreseen this brutal outcome all along. Confused, Hillya turns to him and asks what he could possibly mean by that. Hillya angrily confronts Gerald, demanding to know why he didn't warn her about Sir Betrayals' terrible state. Gerald is unfazed, stating he simply reported the facts. The knight was alive. Furious, Hillya reminds him she commissioned him for accurate information, not just the bare minimum. Suddenly, Gerald grabs her, pulling her close. He leans in and taunts her, questioning if asking her husband to check on her supposed lover isn't a bit much. Shocked by the accusation, Hillya firmly reminds him that she already made it clear Betrayals isn't her lover. Pushing him back, Hillya icily states that his accusations are an insult to Sir Betrayals' honor. But Gerald isn't convinced, pointing out the desperate look she had when she ran to the knight's side. Done arguing, Hillya tells him to think whatever he wants. She delivers a final, chilling threat. If his little misunderstanding causes Betrayals any more harm, she won't let him get away with it. She turns to leave, only to be met by a terrifying sight. It's Ludwig, who looks absolutely ecstatic as he shouts that she's finally back. Ludwig's Psycho X, the Grand Duke, ecstatically declares he knew she'd return. While his aide tries to snap him out of it, Ludwig is lost in his own world, suddenly captivated by Hillya's beauty. He asks her if she was always this gorgeous. Hillya, completely unimpressed, questions how much he's had to drink. Gerald steps in, telling Ludwig to leave, but the Grand Duke claims it's his house. Hillya grabs his arm, coldly informing him that it's her house now, and he no longer has any reason to be there. Hillya informs Ludwig that she's already married to the crown prince, so they're strangers now. When Ludwig refuses to accept it, she twists the knife, pointing out that she's technically his new sister-in-law. This comment sends the psycho, X over the edge. Screaming that she belongs to him, Ludwig lunges forward. But before he can reach her, a masked Gerald intercepts him, stopping him with a firm grip. Ludwig chokes out, demanding to know who he is, as a stunned Hillya cries out for Gerald to let him go. Ludwig completely snaps, roaring that Hillya is his woman and his possession. This sets Gerald off. The masked Mercenary King thinks about how irritating the Grand Duke is and considers just ending him right there to protect his wife's honor. He effortlessly overpowers Ludwig, pinning him down as the aides panic. But just as his killing intent spikes, Hillya calmly calls his name. The fearsome mercenary immediately submits, answering her command. She tells him to leave Ludwig be and instead deal with the others who dared to make a scene. With a chillingly obedient, "Yes, master," Gerald turns his attention from Ludwig. The Grand Duke's men don't stand a chance, begging for mercy as they are swiftly taken care of. Internally, Gerald admits he nearly lost his composure because of her. The chaos is too much for Ludwig, who passes out cold from the shock. His aide panics, but Hillya is unfazed. She calmly states that their guest has fallen asleep and orders a carriage to escort him home, putting a final, humiliating end to the entire confrontation. With Ludwig down for the count, his aide loses his mind, screaming that Hillya is heartless. But Hillya shuts him down cold. She reminds him she's the crown princess now and has no connection to Ludwig. She then flips the script, listing how Ludwig's crew disrespected her home, leaving the aides speechless. Hillya then turns to Gerald, casually asking about the punishment for insulting royalty. Her masked husband declares the man's tongue should be taken. Hillya agrees, but orders Gerald to bring the terrified man along, stating this is not the place for it. With a simple yes, Gerald accepts the order. Ludwig's aide completely loses it, falling to his knees and begging Hillya for mercy. But she is fresh out of sympathy. With an ice-cold expression, she commands Gerald to restrain him. The Mercenary King answers with a chillingly obedient, "Yes, master," and immediately grabs the screaming man. As the aide cries out for his Grand Duke, Hillya glances back. She tells him to keep screaming while he still can, because those will be the last words his tongue ever speaks. Absolute boss move. As Ludwig's aide is dragged away, his desperate screams echo through the night. He begs Hillya for mercy, pleading with her not to harm him. But Hillya has something far more permanent in mind. She grabs the terrified man, asking why she'd bother with a simple blade when there are better ways to ensure silence. She reveals her plan, to use a magical Delphine family artifact to curse his tongue. The moment he speaks a word of what happened, it's game over for him. The aide looks on in absolute horror as Hillya prepares the spell. As the aide's terrifying screams fade into the night, Hillya and her masked husband stand in complete control of the situation. While Ludwig remains kneeling in defeat, Gerald calmly turns away, wiping a trickle of blood from his mouth. He remarks that it would be a problem if his rival didn't survive this encounter and orders him taken to a physician. With that handled, Hillya addresses the silent crowd with an ice-cold glare. She dares anyone else who wishes to insult her or disobey her commands to speak up now. The room remains dead silent. With the immediate threats handled, Hillya's mind races. She knows she must act fast to clean house and root out anyone still loyal to Ludwig and Evangeline. The night's chaos will spread as rumors, and her reputation depends on how decisively she moves. Addressing the bowing staff, she issues a command. Anyone who knows the details of Ludwig's plot to frame her family must submit a written statement. She promises that those who provide useful information might receive some leniency, leaving the traitors to weigh their loyalties against their survival. Hillya knew her night was far from over. The Real house cleaning was just beginning. A few hours later, inside her family's office, she stood before a desk piled high with written confessions. Looking down at her powerful husband, Gerald, who was kneeling on the floor beside her, she told him he could go ahead and laugh at the situation. But Gerald wasn't amused. He looked up, genuinely asking why he would ever laugh at her. With a small sigh, Hillya gestured to the mountain of statements, saying the reason should be obvious. Hillya explains that her family's finances are such a disaster. Anyone who wasn't stealing from them would be a fool. She openly admits her failure to control her own household, which is why she fully expected him to laugh at her. But Gerald simply looks back at her and gives a serious promise that he won't laugh. Hillya is visibly taken aback by his sincerity, admitting his response was unexpected. Regaining her composure, she warns him that his chance to mock her has passed, and she won't tolerate it from now on. Breaking the silence, Gerald's expression turns deadly serious. He tells Hillya there's something he needs to ask. His focus is on the magical item she used on Ludwig's man earlier. He cuts straight to the point, wanting to know if that thing can actually put a curse on someone. The thought of a curse with such specific, unbreakable rules seems almost impossible, and he remembers the attendant's terrified face. He looks at her intensely, demanding to know if that kind of power is for real. Hillya pauses, considering his question before starting her explanation. With a bright smile, Hillya admits the curse was a complete lie. She reveals the powerful artifact is just a simple toy that lights up and flaps its wings on command. She just made it glow red to scare Ludwig's attendant as much as possible. Gerald is stunned, calling her a truly unpredictable woman. But Hillya's mood shifts, her smile fading. She explains the toy is actually a precious keepsake, the last gift her mother ever gave her. She then asks if he's disappointed she'd use something so sentimental to threaten someone. Gerald flatly denies being disappointed. On the contrary, he tells a stunned Hillya that he was quite impressed. He compares her clever bluff to the time she boldly stood before the Emperor, using his mother's relic to pull off an even bigger con. He then offers a surprising thought. Her own mother would probably be pleased. When Hillya asks what he means, Gerald explains that it doesn't matter how the gift was used. As long as it was used to her advantage, any loving parent would simply be glad. Hillya quietly admits her mother is gone, so she'll never know what she would have wanted. Still, Gerald's strange words bring her an unexpected sense of comfort. As he turns to leave, he stops with one last thing to add. With a smirk, he declares that since she blackmailed him into this, he'll be the one to completely crush Ludwig for good. The next morning, Gerald wakes up in a fancy, unfamiliar bed with his head pounding. He looks around in total confusion, trying to figure out where on earth he is. An attendant informs the dazed Gerald that he is at the Grand Duke's residence. This makes no sense. The last thing he remembers is being at Hillya's estate. As he tries to piece things together, a disturbing memory flashes through his mind. He looks up, and to his horror, Evangeline is standing right there in the room, her eyes burning with rage. Looking down on him, she coldly asks if he has any idea what he has just done. The implication is clear. Something terrible has happened. Evangeline stood over Gerald, demanding to know if he understood the gravity of his actions. Completely baffled, he could only ask what he'd even done. Then, fragmented memories of the night before came rushing back. He saw himself at Hillya's estate, pounding on her door and screaming her name. In a desperate frenzy, he fought against his own men as they tried to restrain him, roaring for them to let him go because Hillya was his. His last memory was of screaming her name into the night. Ludwig refused to believe it, trying to convince himself it was just a terrible, drunken dream. But Evangeline loomed over him, confirming it was all real. She spelled out his shameful actions for him. The great Grand Duke Kieln had stumbled over to his ex-fiancée's house in his pajamas, drunkenly screaming her name for everyone to hear. Grabbing him by the collar, she informed him that his pathetic little meltdown was now the talk of the entire capital. Ludwig was left speechless, the weight of his public humiliation crashing down on him. Desperate, Ludwig fell to his knees, pleading with Evangeline to save him. He panicked that if the Emperor and Empress discovered his drunken display, he would be completely finished. But Evangeline looked down at him with pure disgust. It was already eating her up inside, seeing Hillya stand proudly beside Arpt. Now, Ludwig's pathetic behavior only made the comparison worse. His claim to power was already weak, and this scandal just added fuel to the fire. She wondered if it would be better to just throw him away and start fresh. As Ludwig clung to Evangeline, pathetically begging her to save him, she looked on with pure contempt. Their confrontation was suddenly cut short by a scream from downstairs. Rushing to see the cause of the commotion, Ludwig's butler found movers carrying huge crates into the mansion. The confused man demanded an explanation for the intrusion. A mover simply stated that they were delivering the Grand Duke's belongings. Hillya was publicly returning every single gift Ludwig had ever given her, adding another layer of humiliation to his epic downfall. Evangeline explained that with the engagement annulled, Hillya was returning all of Ludwig's belongings. But a sudden panic washed over her as she realized her own possessions were also at the Delphin estate. This wasn't just a breakup return, it was a full-blown attack. Hillya had filed official charges against the pair for embezzlement and illegal occupation of her family's property. With a victorious smirk, Hillya knew she had won. Someone like Ludwig could never be emperor, and thanks to her, that's exactly what everyone in the capital was now saying. Hillya turns to Arpt, asking if he isn't angry about the way things played out. He has no idea what she's talking about. She explains that in the public's eye, he came out looking like a powerful prince who crushed his rival. She, on the other hand, is seen as a simple pawn who is used. Arpt is surprised, admitting he thought she'd be resentful since she did all the heavy lifting. But Hillya just flashes a brilliant smile, declaring she actually prefers it this way. For now, she needs a shadow for cover. Ludwig stood frozen in shock, but Hillya simply smiled, satisfied that this was more than enough for her. A few days later, Hillya sat in the Crown Prince's palace, listening to the latest court gossip from Lady Filern. The news was that Lady Evangeline was terribly hurt by the incident. She had even cried in the Empress's salon, gaining the sympathy of all the nobles. Hillya took in the news calmly, understanding that at a recent banquet, Evangeline had expertly played the victim to manipulate the court. Meanwhile, Evangeline is in full-on damage control mode. She plays the ultimate victim, pretending Hillya betrayed her and soaking up the sympathy from other noble ladies. But Hillya knows the truth. Underneath that fragile act, Evangeline is absolutely furious about her defeat. Later, Hillya sits down with Lady Filern and puts on a show. With a pout, she declares that she's the one who's upset. The lady asks why. Hillya fakes being hurt that the prince didn't tell his one and only friend about his big plan. It works. The spy falls for it, revealing that Evangeline was mad at her for the lack of intel. Lady Filern smugly suggests that Hillya should take responsibility for the whole mess. Playing innocent, Hillya asks what she means. The spy declares that Hillya must personally ask Evangeline for reconciliation. When Hillya acts shocked, Lady Filern doubles down, insisting she should apologize since the whole affair was her fault. This audacity is the final straw. Hillya's hand grips her teacup so hard it's a wonder it doesn't break. A dark smile creeps onto her face as she struggles to contain the rage boiling just beneath the surface. Hillya finally reaches her limit. With a wicked smile, she sends her cup of tea flying, drenching Lady Filern. The spy lets out a shriek, completely stunned and demanding to know what Hillya is doing. Hillya offers the fakest apology imaginable, her eyes cold as ice. She claims that she was just so shocked by the ridiculous nonsense the lady was spouting that her hand simply slipped. This was no accident. It was a crystal clear warning that the games are officially over. As Lady Filern continues to run her mouth, Hillya's patience snaps. In her mind, she imagines unleashing chaos, grabbing the spy and sending the entire cup of tea flying right in her face. The fantasy is so real, she can almost hear the woman shriek. But back in reality, her hand only tightens on the cup. Lady Filern tries to get her attention, asking if she's even listening. Snapping out of her violent daydream, Hillya puts on a sweet smile, apologizing and claiming she's just a little tired. The mask is back on. Hillya is seriously tempted to just dump the entire cup of tea on Lady Filern. But she holds back. A single moment of satisfaction isn't worth derailing her entire plan. This lady is a complete waste of time. Suddenly, a new idea clicks into place. A far more important person comes to mind. The exact piece she needs for her next move. Meanwhile, over at the Marquis's residence, Evangeline is fuming. She demands to know if that girl really said she would formally apologize to her, her face twisting with rage. Lady Filern reports back to a fuming Evangeline, admitting the plan to get an apology completely failed. She explains that Hillya just kept dodging the question. To make matters worse, Hillya put on a huge act, complaining that the crown prince was so demanding at night that she was simply too exhausted for anything else. This sends Evangeline over the edge. Taking it as a personal insult and shameless bragging, she accuses Hillya of mocking her. Snapping completely, she grabs her own cup and hurls the scalding tea right into the spy's face, causing a pained shriek. Trembling from the hot splash, Lady Filern asks how Evangeline could do such a thing. But the spoiled brat is far from finished. Seething, Evangeline screams that until Hillya apologizes to her personally, Filern better not show her face again. While Evangeline throws her tantrum, Hillya is already 2 steps ahead, executing her next move. In a bright, sunlit room, she calmly greets the noble lady she was waiting for. Just then, the grand doors swing open as a man, Secretary Felix Ulken, makes his entrance. The next piece of her puzzle has arrived. Hillya calmly greets Secretary Felix Ulken, noting that this is their first real private meeting. She remembers him well from her past lives, also recalling that this man always met a terrible end. A dark memory flashes through her mind, showing a defiant Ulken trapped in a cell. He screams that he would rather serve a competent madman than watch a greedy, incompetent fool like Ludwig run the empire into the ground. It's obvious. This man despises Ludwig and would never accept him as a ruler, making him the perfect ally. Hillya is lost in a painful memory. In a past life, she watched as Secretary Ulken, despite being starved and brutally beaten, never stopped shouting for the rightful crown prince. Seeing his stubborn defiance, even as she suffered herself, brought her a strange sense of comfort. His cries for justice only stopped when he faced his tragic end at the hands of Ludwig's regime. Back in the present, her intense gaze makes Ulken fidget. He nervously asks why she's staring, snapping Hillya out of her thoughts. She tells herself this is no time to be lost in memories. Snapping back to the present, Hillya offers the flustered secretary a drink to make him comfortable. But this isn't a friendly chat. With a sharp gaze, she declares that she has an order for him. Ulken is completely caught off guard. Hillya then calls him out, accusing him of setting up a maid to disrespect her and refusing to use her proper title. She knows exactly why. He believes she's unfit to be the crown princess and will only be a burden to Arpt. He tries to play innocent, but Hillya has him dead to rights. Ulkin tries to play dumb, claiming that's a big assumption since they've barely spoken. But Hillya isn't having it. She points out that he still won't use her proper title. Feigning surprise, he thanks her for pointing out his little mistake. Instead of arguing, Hillya slides a document across the table. She proposes a wager, catching him off guard. With a confident smirk, she declares that after he reads what's on that paper, she bets he will finally call her, Your Highness the Crown Princess.
Game on.
Ulkin reads the document and pauses. The stakes are massive, 1 million castle. But he's no fool. Before agreeing to the wager, he questions her ability to get the money, pointing out she doesn't have authority over the crown princess's official budget. Hillya's smile turned sharp. She reminds him that he seems to have forgotten she is the head of the powerful Delphine family. She can definitely afford it. With a confident glare, she clarifies she has no intention of giving him a single coin, then asks him directly, will he take the bet or not? Meanwhile, back at the Delphine estate, Hillya's loyal maid finds Sir Betlian. The knight is awake, but clearly still recovering, his torso covered in bandages from a recent ordeal. Wasting no time, the maid informs him he has a direct order from Her Highness the Crown Princess to report to the palace at once. Hearing Hillya's new title and the urgent summons, the injured knight looks up, surprised. It's clear Hillya is already mobilizing her team and getting down to business. Hillya ups the ante, betting a jaw-dropping 1 million castle. Ulkin is completely floored by the amount and immediately gets skeptical. He questions how she plans to pay up, pointing out that she doesn't control the crown princess's official funds. But Hillya shuts him down with a simple reminder. She is the head of the powerful House Delphine and can easily afford it. Ulkin is speechless, suddenly remembering that, contrary to rumors, this woman stabilized her entire territory all on her own. He clearly underestimated her. As Ulkin hesitates, he recalls that Hillya somehow hired Gerald, the infamous mercenary king who snubs even royalty. He realizes she might be far more capable than he ever imagined. Seeing his doubt, Hillya casually tells him to hand the documents back if he doesn't like the terms. Ulkin smirks, convinced it's easy money, and says he never refused the bet. He snatches the paper from her, but as he unfolds it, his confidence completely shatters. His eyes widen in disbelief at what he's reading. He clearly wasn't expecting this. Hillya calmly sips her tea, explaining that Ulkin will have to uncover the hard proof himself and that the conspiracy might run even deeper. Ulkin stares at the document, stammering in disbelief at the names listed. Hillya coolly asks if the information is useful. Snapping out of his shock, Ulkin's eyes gleam with excitement as he declares it's an incredible breakthrough. With her point proven, Hillya reminds him about their wager. She holds out her hand, telling him it's time to pay up the 1 million castle he owes her. Back in his office, Ulkin is completely out of it, still reeling from his meeting with Hillya. His aide tries to report something important, but Ulkin suddenly stops him. With his quill hovering over the paper, Ulkin makes a shocking confession. He believes he has completely fallen for the crown princess. The aide is absolutely floored, asking his boss if he's lost his mind. But Ulkin is dead serious, totally captivated by the woman who just outsmarted him at every turn. He's completely smitten. News of Hillya's latest power move spreads like wildfire. Arpt receives a report detailing how she completely won over Yulkin, a man obsessed with merit and nothing else. He learns about her audacity to stake 1 million castle and her flawless ability to identify spies sent from the Empress's palace. Arpt's aide is stunned, questioning how she could possibly know about agents they hadn't even caught yet. Meanwhile, the news reaches Empress Isabel and Evangeline, who are in complete denial. The Empress immediately dismisses the claims, flatly stating that it's impossible. Arpt's aide continues his analysis, stating that if Hillya was truly aligned with the Empress, marrying Ludwig would have been the far more advantageous move. Arpt agrees, realizing that planting a spy isn't worth sacrificing the chance to make Ludwig the heir. His thoughts turn to Hillya's unbelievable promise to suppress his madness, a claim she already proved to the public. He concludes she's an enigma who always holds exactly what he needs. A small smirk appears as he muses aloud that the crown princess seems very fond of him, leaving his aide completely bewildered. Despite being completely head over heels for Hillya, Ulkin slams his hand down and professionally rejects her proposal. Elsewhere, Prince Arpt is also in a foul mood, making his aide's life miserable. The poor guy is freaking out after Arpt rejects a mountain of documents for the pettiest reason ever. He doesn't like the paper's texture. The crown prince coldly orders him to rewrite everything from scratch. 3 days later, Hillya makes her grand entrance into the sacred hall, looking absolutely stunning and ready for the wedding of the century. Hillya recalls how her loyal knight Beltane suffered Ludwig's wrath after her abduction. Determined to protect her loyal allies, she decides to formally make Beltane her personal knight to guarantee his safety. As she and Annie step out, they're stopped in their tracks by Prince Arpad. He is completely captivated, thinking his bride is so beautiful it's almost painful to look at her. Playing his part, he smoothly asks where she is going dressed for a grand banquet, and then gallantly offers to be her personal escort for the evening. Hillya elegantly offers her hand, assuring the prince it is always his. But Arpad doesn't just take it. He grips it with a surprising intensity that catches her completely off guard. Baffled by his sudden appearance and strange behavior, she asks him what this is all about. Arpad gets straight to the point, accusing her of having far too many men in her orbit. Before a stunned Hillya can even respond, he starts a list, cheekily counting himself as the first man and that loser Ludwig as the second. Arpad isn't finished with his jealous rant. He adds a third name to the list, Yulkin. Hillya is completely confused, wondering why he's even being mentioned. The prince explains that because of her, Yulkin had become another one of her loyal hounds. Hillya laughs nervously, calling it a cruel joke, but Arp's expression turns cold. He moves on to the fourth man on his list, the knight who had the gall to draw his sword right in front of him.
Clearly, he still hasn't gotten over that.
Arp continues his jealous rant, naming the fourth man on his list, the knight who had the nerve to draw his sword on him. As if on cue, the maids suddenly cry out as Sir Beltane himself walks into the room. Before Hillya can even greet him, another man appears from behind and forcefully grabs her by the waist. Completely shocked, she struggles against his tight grip, demanding he let her go and asking what he thinks he's doing. The mysterious blonde man just looks at her coolly, asking why she'd even need to ask. The mysterious blonde man is none other than Arpad himself, and he has an answer for Hillya. He coolly asks if he, as her legal spouse, doesn't have the right to be jealous. Hillya is completely floored, stammering at the words legal spouse. Arpad leans in, reminding her he's the only man who actually completed the marriage ceremony with her. Flustered, she demands he let her go, but the tension is shattered by the sound of a blade being drawn. Sir Beltane kneels before Hillya, pledging his sword and his life to her. A flashback hits Hillya. Sir Beltane once vowed to be devoted to her for his entire life. Suddenly, it all makes perfect sense. He isn't in on the plan. The loyal knight genuinely believes she was abducted from her wedding and needs saving. As she processes this huge misunderstanding, a nearby noble tries to address her as my lady. But Arpad, still holding her waist, cuts him off immediately. He boldly corrects the man, announcing to everyone that her proper title isn't my lady, it's crown princess. Arpad keeps his cool, explaining that in a situation as formal as a knight's oath, using the wrong title is a massive insult to his new wife. Sir Beltane listens, his mind flashing back. He believes his only purpose is to follow his master, Hillya. He remembers the intense guilt he felt for letting her get abducted, thinking he deserved the worst for his failure. But Hillya had not only forgiven his past mistakes, she had personally busted him out of prison. His loyalty isn't just a job, he's ready to offer her far more than just a knight's oath. Sir Beltane grips his sword, vowing to rescue Hillya if she gives the command. She panics internally, realizing he's completely serious about saving her. Meanwhile, Arpad is loving the drama. He smirks at the loyal knight, mockingly asking if he thinks he's some hero come to save a princess from a dragon. Trapped, Hillya decides to play along. She puts on a sweet face and formally thanks His Highness for being so considerate of his wife. But Arpad one-ups her, leaning in to correct her. He tells her to call him darling instead. Hillya steels herself, remembering the official story. This is a happy couple, deeply in love. It's cheesy, but it's the only way to convince her overprotective knight. Arpad, however, decides to push her buttons. He leans in close, whispering that a simple thank you isn't nearly enough gratitude. Realizing he's just trying to make her squirm, Hillya calls his bluff. She goes on the offensive, planting a bold kiss right on his cheek. The surprise attack works perfectly, leaving the cocky prince completely stunned and frozen in place. Hillya's moment of triumph vanishes when she sees a sly smile spread across Arp's face. Before she can process it, he closes the gap, tilting her chin up to meet his lips. Her mind races. She knows Sir Beltane is watching, but pulling away now would ruin everything. She realizes this isn't about affection, it's a power move. Caught in his game, Hillya is left completely stunned as Arpad makes their fake relationship look dangerously real, silencing her and her overprotective knight in one bold stroke. Arpad pulls back, looking incredibly smug after his bold move. He coolly asks Hillya if that was enough of a thank you for him. But the real show was for Sir Beltane, who stands there completely shell-shocked. The loyal knight finally voices the question on his mind, asking if they truly love each other. Without missing a beat, Hillya turns to him and firmly says yes. She declares her genuine love for the crown prince. Hearing her conviction, Beltane visibly relaxes. He bows deeply, expressing his relief and accepting her new reality. With her loyal knight finally convinced, Hillya breathes a quiet sigh of relief. Arpt seizes the moment, acknowledging that Sir Beltane is finally using Hillya's proper title. As a reward for his loyalty, Arpt officially promotes him to the rank of Imperial Knight, commanding him to serve the crown princess with all his heart. Beltane bows, accepting his new duty. Later, Hillya notices one of Arpt's aides looks completely exhausted. The poor guy explains Arpt rejected all his reports, forcing him to pull an all-night. Hillya just sighs, admitting that the prince can be surprisingly petty. The aide quickly corrects Hillya, insisting the prince isn't just petty, he's downright mean. He tearfully declares that she is the only one on his side, and is far too good for a man like Arpt. After composing himself, he asks why she requested information on Evangeline. Hillya's expression grows cold as she reads his report. She knows Evangeline isn't just some socialite, she uses special abilities to manipulate everyone. To defeat an enemy with that kind of power, Hillya realizes she needs a solid counterplan of her own. A few days later, Hillya pays a visit to the Empress's palace. The two women exchange pleasantries in a stunning rose garden, but their polite chat is cut short. The Empress looks over Hillya's shoulder, calling out to an unseen arrival. A familiar voice rings out, and Hillya turns around in shock. It's not the Mercenary King she knows, but Crown Prince Arpt, dressed in his formal, imposing uniform. Completely caught off guard by his sudden appearance, she asks what he's doing crashing her private meeting in the Empress's personal garden. The Empress confronts Arpt, demanding to know why he's crashing her private meeting. With a smooth smile, Arpt announces he's simply looking for his beloved wife. But the Empress is not impressed, reminding him that her anniversary party is in full swing, and this is hardly the place to search. While the Empress is annoyed, Hillya is secretly pleased. She recognizes this grand entrance for what it is, a calculated performance. It turns out Arpt isn't just making a scene for Hillya, he's also grabbing the attention of another important guest, the daughter of House Solene. Arpt's big show was all for Icefine Solene. Her family, the Marquise of Solene, is a huge power in the West, with roots older than the empire itself. The head of this powerhouse is Archduchess Action, who absolutely hates the current Empress Isabel. Their bad blood goes way back to when Isabel was just a lady-in-waiting for the former Empress. Action publicly accused Isabel of making a move on the Emperor, splitting the entire social world in two. It's the Empress versus House Solene, and everyone has to pick a side. The Empress may run the capital's social circles, but the powerful old families in the West want nothing to do with her. It's a total stalemate. So when Icefine Solene shows up, Evangeline sees a golden opportunity. She lays on the charm, trying to get Icefine to support the Empress and, more importantly, stay away from Hillya's upcoming wedding banquet. But Icefine shuts her down cold. With a calm sip of tea, she reminds Evangeline that the Empress was just a servant to her great-aunt, a burn that stings because it's true. The tension between the Empress and House Solene is ancient history. Turns out, before Empress Isabel was royalty, she was a lady-in-waiting who served Archduchess Action. This is exactly why Hillya needs Lady Solene on her side to stand against the Empress. But her strategic thoughts are shattered when Arpt waltzes in, loudly asking if anyone has seen his adorable little squirrel. Hillya is completely mortified. He's definitely doing this just to annoy her. She'd asked him to draw a little attention, not call her a pet name in public. It all clicks for Hillya. This is why Arpt agreed so happily. He's enjoying this. As the Empress seethes, Arpt puts on a show, claiming he'd never ruin her party. He spins a sentimental tale about the garden being a gift from his father to his mother, saying he and his beloved wife simply got lost. The excuse is so flimsy that the Empress is shaking with anger. Watching from afar, Hillya sees her chance. Arpt has everyone's attention, and now she's ready to make her move. With everyone distracted by Arpt's chaos, Hillya slips away and finds her target, Lady Icefine Solene, hiding amongst the roses. Lady Solene explains her dress got soaked, which is why she's tucked away. She points out that the Crown Prince is loudly searching for Hillya, but our girl plays it cool, claiming she was just trying to surprise her husband. Seeing her chance, Hillya grabs the noble lady's hand, insisting they move inside. Once away from the drama, Icefine formally introduces herself, finally getting to greet the famous princess consort properly. Hillya instantly connects the dots. Lady Solene's ruined dress wasn't some clumsy accident, it was a deliberate act of petty revenge from Evangeline. Hillya remembers that look of pure contempt from her past lives, the way Evangeline would mock them all as simple book characters. In Evangeline's mind, they're just puppets for her to play with. But Hillya clenches her fist, her resolve hardening. She has lived, struggled, and grown in this world. She makes a silent, burning vow to one day scream the truth. They are real, living beings. Lady Soline snaps Hillya out of her dark memories. Playing it cool, Hillya smiles and says she's glad they can finally talk. But the noble lady cuts right to the chase, asking why Hillya really helped her. She knows Hillya doesn't need a reason to help someone in distress, but this felt different, especially with the crown prince causing a huge, deliberate distraction outside. Then, she drops a bombshell, telling Hillya that if this was a ploy to win over the Western salons, then her efforts were completely pointless. Lady Soline drops a huge truth bomb. She's a discarded child of her house. Confused, Hillya asks why. The noble lady explains she angered her powerful grandfather, the Marquis. Her punishment was being sent here, to the central salons, where he fully expected her to be publicly humiliated and cast out by society. But Hillya just calmly takes her hand. She tells Lady Soline that she wasn't asking for help. In a total power move, Hillya reveals that actually, she thinks she might be able to help her. Lady Soline politely declines the offer, stating that as an outcast from her family, she has nothing of value to give Hillya in return. Unfazed, Hillya simply smiles and drops a name, Rita Morgan. She then reveals this is the secret alias of the legendary owner of the famous Morgan boutique in the West, a designer whose innovative creations even the central nobles are desperate to own. Lady Soline is completely stunned, her teacup shattering as Hillya confirms that she knows her secret identity. Hillya recalls the tragic history she knows from her past life. Rita Morgan was a legendary designer, the absolute star of Western society whose fame even reached the central salons. But after just 2 brilliant years, she suddenly passed away from a supposed illness. It was only after her death that the truth came out. She was Lady Icefine from the powerful House Soline. Hillya remembers how her family's fierce opposition led to Icefine being sent to a convent. Back in the present, Lady Soline bolts upright, demanding to know how Hillya has this information. Lady Soline tries to downplay the revelation, insisting that Hillya's information has no value. But Hillya just smirks, firing back that she knows exactly what Rita Morgan is capable of. Addressing the designer by her secret name, Hillya makes an offer that leaves her speechless, to create the dress for the star of the upcoming Ardennes Hall banquet. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, a direct path back into the spotlight she was forced out of. Overwhelmed, Lady Soline's confidence crumbles, and she whispers that she simply can't do it. Lady Soline's confidence completely shatters. She explains that if she starts sewing again, her powerful grandfather will be furious. To escape his wrath, she already got rid of her shop, her tools, and all her materials. But Hillya calmly cuts through her excuses, suggesting she simply work under a different name. To prove she's serious, Hillya offers to provide a new shop and supplies immediately, right on the capital's main street. Overwhelmed by this incredible offer, Lady Soline just has one question. Why is Hillya doing all of this for her? Hillya reveals her motives. The official story is that she wants the best dress for the most important day of her life. But the real reason, she explains, is that she's investing in Lady Soline's untapped potential. Hillya then returns the yellow dress ruined by the tea spill earlier. While the incident was insulting, she points out the dress's gorgeous color is undeniable. She looks at the stunned designer with absolute conviction, stating her belief that Rita Morgan has the true ability to succeed, leaving the legendary designer completely floored by this show of faith. Lady Soline is totally fired up, her heart pounding with a new mission. Hillya has challenged her to turn this disastrous incident into a legendary comeback. A couple of hours later, Hillya finally relaxes, confident her plan is working. She remembers from her past life that Lady Soline would have eventually succeeded on her own, but only after 5 long, bitter years. Hillya just gave her a massive shortcut, believing talent should shine right away. Plus, she knows that recruiting the designer will get the attention of another, much more powerful person. As Hillya relaxes, a voice suddenly calls out to his little squirrel. She jumps, startled to see Arpt leaning over her with a smug grin. Annoyed, she demands to know where he's been. He coolly replies that he was just following her orders. Hillya groans, realizing he's been using that awful nickname this whole time. She complains that her fun is over, but Arpt reveals the truth. He explains he made sure nobody disturbed her private meeting by purposely drawing all the attention in the room to himself, creating the perfect diversion. Hillya leaps to her feet, completely flustered. She scolds Arpt, telling him he went way too far and could have just said something normal. But Arpt just smirks, thinking about how quickly the rumors are going to spread. He leans in, teasing that her annoyed expression is cute, which only makes her more furious. She yells at him to seriously stop it. Later that day at the Empress's palace, Empress Isabel paces angrily. She's livid that Hillya would dare act like she wasn't adored by the Emperor. Evangeline tries to calm Empress Isabel down, but it's no use. The Empress is absolutely furious, asking how she could possibly relax. She screams, recalling Arp's ultimate insult. He called his own mother the real Empress, which basically meant Isabel was nothing. While Evangeline comforts her raging mother, a cold, calculating look takes over her face. She understands this all-consuming desire for power. In a chilling internal monologue, she confirms that she is exactly the same, because in her mind, she is the true heroine of this world. As the Empress hugs her, Evangeline internally declares that she is the one who should have had it all. Though Isabel embraces her daughter, she is seething with rage. She tightens her fist, convinced that Hillya is the one who forced her hand and made this whole situation so infuriating. Breaking the hug, Evangeline looks up at her mother with a sharp, knowing gaze. She asks if the Empress knows. Isabel, confused, asks what she means. With a chilling expression, Evangeline asks her mother if she knows how to trigger the royals' madness. Evangeline drops a bombshell on her mother, asking if she knows the secret to triggering the imperial family's madness. While the Empress looks totally stunned, Evangeline smirks to herself. As a transmigrator who read the original story, she holds all the cards. She internally reveals a massive secret. Empress Isabel was directly involved in the tragic downfall of the previous Empress, Roxelane. But just as Isabel looks haunted by the past, Evangeline thinks that the real problem is something else entirely, leaving her mother completely in the dark. Evangeline drops a huge bombshell, but only to herself. Turns out, she never even finished reading the original novel. She admits she just skimmed it and chose Ludwig because he seemed like the safe, male lead. Her entire plan was to control him, but Hillya siding with Arpt completely wrecked her strategy. Absolutely furious, Evangeline vows to intervene no matter what. Turning back to her mother, she confronts the secretive Empress with a critical question. She asks if her mother knows the method to either worsen or relieve the imperial family's madness. The Empress is completely thrown off, demanding to know who put such wild ideas in Evangeline's head. But Evangeline is certain she's on the right track. If the madness is a curse, there must be a way to control it. Putting on an innocent act, she begs her mother to share the secret, promising she only wants to help. The Empress immediately shuts her down, telling her to forget the whole thing and sending her away. Evangeline reluctantly agrees to leave, but her determined expression makes it clear she's not giving up. 2 days later, just an hour before the grand imperial banquet, Hillya reveals her secret weapon. She holds up a stunning amethyst necklace, a priceless relic that belonged to her late mother, the previous Empress. Hillya knows her grandmother rescued these items from the palace before Empress Isabel could get her hands on them. She asks Arpt if wearing this will make an impression. With the banquet being a four-way meeting between them and the imperial couple, Arpt agrees it's the perfect power move to assert her presence and win allies. As they prepare for the banquet, Arpt suddenly calls Hillya an adorably dressed little squirrel. Completely annoyed, she warns him not to use his handsome face to get away with the teasing. With a smirk, Arpt leans in closer, turning her words around. He suggests that if she thinks he's using his looks as a weapon, it must just mean she likes his appearance that much. Totally flustered, Hillya shoves him away, sputtering that he is absolutely not her type. He just looks on, thoroughly enjoying her reaction. Not backing down, Arpt presses Hillya to describe her ideal type. Flustered, she quickly lists off a bunch of traits. Not too handsome, a bit shorter and sturdier, and most importantly, diligent. But her plan to describe the opposite of Arpt backfires spectacularly when he points out she just gave a perfect description of her knight, Betrayals. The playful mood evaporates as Arpt asks if she's really not in a relationship with him. Annoyed, Hillya firmly denies it, arguing she'd have no reason to hide it. The air grows thick with silence. Hillya tries to shut down the awkward conversation by reminding Arpt that their relationship is purely contractual. She insists that neither of them should care if the other has a lover. After a moment of silence, she asks him if he remembers a promise they made. When he seems clueless, she specifies it was the deal concerning her knight, Betrayals, from the day he first took her. With a smirk, Arpt leans in and lays down a surprising new rule. When it's just the two of them, she is not to talk about other men. Hillya is completely baffled by his new, possessive rule. She can't help but wonder if the Mercenary King is actually jealous of her knight. Thinking fast, she points out that he was the one who brought Betrayals up in the first place. Arpt simply admits that she's right. Seeing her chance, Hillya asks if that means he'll stay quiet as long as she does. He agrees, so she smugly withdraws her request. But as they arrive at the grand banquet hall, she realizes he just played her and shouts that he's being so petty. As Hillya and Arpt enter the grand hall, a sharp voice cuts through the air, telling Arpt he's late. Hillya is stunned. Not only is someone already here, but she recognizes that voice immediately. It's the Empress. Turns out, the Empress arrived early on purpose, fully intending to use royal etiquette to accuse them of being disrespectful. But before the Empress can press her advantage, Arpt calmly turns to Hillya. Unfazed by the political trap, he simply holds out his hand, telling her to escort him forward.